What have you done?
Is that better?
Now you can hear yourself.
Can you guys hear now? Cool. All right. Yeah, sorry about that.
I mean, it would be funny to do a silent stream at some point, just rely entirely on the closed captioning.
The thing is, a silent stream when the thumbnail is about blindness is probably not the most
it's the kind of
congruent.
True.
Okay.
True.
What are your thoughts on the silent disco concept?
Stupid, and I hate it.
I don't like it. Yeah. I get it. I get why it's a thing, but like,
yeah, it's really dumb.
I don't know.
It's dumb.
I think people having fun is a good thing. But
I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that's.
You don't think people having fun is a good thing? I am shocked by this information.
People having fun is what is ruining society. All right. On that joyous introduction, we have a show apparently for you guys. Sorry for the delay. My internet decided to cut out randomly, but now it is back. We can't be. We will not be stopped. So yeah, we have some topics for today, but before we launch into that, let me just give a quick plug to headphones.com that makes all of these streams and all of our content possible. Headphones.com is a great place to learn about and buy headphones with a ridiculous 365-day return policy. That's also where we publish all of our articles, written deep dives. There's several great articles from listener that are up there to help explain why we evaluate the way that we do. And also the point of headphones.com so you can buy with confidence and you can support what we do in the process. We also have our forum at forum.headphones.com, which just recently got an overhaul with a new theme. It's not quite finished yet. There's still some updates probably to come, but it looks a lot nicer now. And then also that's where we pull topics for this stream. So if you want to have your topic featured, definitely participate there. We have gotten some new ones as well, so we go through that thread every week. And also we have our Discord at discord.gg/headphones. I think that's right.
Should be right.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that I missed? I think that's it.
No, I think you're good.
The Spotify podcast integration does seem to work for most of them. So if you don't want to look at our faces, which is totally understandable, you can listen to this visual free. Okay. Let us get into today's topics.
Okay. So the first topic for today is kind of topical.
Subtweeting.
It's topical like the ointment.
Anyway, so
you did not like that. Like,
there's been a video that came out recently from Passion for Sound Lachlan.
Hashtag not my Lachlan. The real ones remember Lachlan likes a thing.
Hashtag not my Lachlan.
Yeah, we're gonna try and see if we can get Lachlan on to these streams to discuss some of his position on these things. I discussed some of the blind testing that he's done, but also I imagine just the way that he approaches this stuff. So we'll look forward.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be more like a wide-spanning discussion about kind of the logic that underpins a piece like this, I guess. But yeah, so he posted a video that was originally titled "Why Blind Testing Doesn't Work for Hi-Fi." He has since changed the title of that video to be something else. I can check what it is now. Yeah, why you shouldn't. Wow, it's even worse now. Why you shouldn't trust blind audio tests. Parentheses according to science. Man, so the video itself and the data it draws upon is less than ideal. So I guess
when you say data it draws upon, but primarily it draws on theory.
But hold on, I also want to note that this prompted some lengthy discussion on our forum. There's a thread Is it dedicated specifically to this?
So
or
actually,
partially?
if they're in chat, I do want to say to Aliophile, to Luke, and to, I think it was Generic on our
Yeah.
forum. If you guys want to discuss that, please make another thread, because that was actually in the suggestions thread.
Oh,
and it
right.
Yeah, no,
progressed
that
for
needs
like
to
a
be
good
its own
30
thread.
posts or something like that.
Right.
But
Um,
anyway,
It's a
yes,
good
there was
discussion.
yeah, it was a spirited discussion, but
Yeah.
I'll try to be better about making sure that discussion is in its proper place next time. But
Rob says, who was the original Professor Warmpoo and what subject did he teach? It's Griffin. Listener is the original Professor Warmpoo. And he taught us all about why treble is bad.
why treble in headphones is bad. Treble is good.
I mean, I have no evidence from you to suggest that it is.
Anyway, wow, that's bad. The video isn't even about blind tests. You're not wrong.
I actually don't agree with that. I think
What do you
I
mean?
see where Aliophile is coming from with that take, but I think that take is
like-
incorrect.
No, I feel like it was. I mean, that's kind of how I unpacked the video. Is that he briefly mentions it in the beginning, and then the whole rest of the video is kind of about.
So for the folks
Perception?
who
And
haven't watched this, can you guys give a brief summary of basically what is being claimed, and then also
I
what
actually
the
have a document
rebuttal
for
is?
this.
yeah,
Of course you do.
I had a whole long response that I posted in our Discord.
So
I
in the first
encourage you
section,
to either read that or listen to Blaine, because
There is
do not watch the video.
and there is also additional context that the videos that Passion for Sound has put out are in the past as well are typically the kind of videos that are along the lines of, like, cables matter, DACs and amps matter, this sort of thing. He's done other I don't know if this is like blind, but other listening sessions with other people in there was one that I watched a while ago, which was where the end result was that people couldn't tell, but it didn't stop him from posting the video about it, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyways, as it relates to this one, Blaine, if you want to give the summary.
So the video can be split, or at least I split it into 5-ish sections. The first section is the one that I think you guys are treating as the only one talking about blind testing. I don't agree with that take, but let me get into the why. So his introduction is, well, it starts with a quite long metaphor of visuals being compared to blind testing, and asserting that blind tests require fast switching speeds, and then asserting that because finding every difference between two pictures as you're quickly flipping between them is difficult, this illustrates the issues with comparing using fast switching in audio. This goes on for quite a while. It eventually transitions to the question of so-called sensory bandwidth. So the second bit, which runs a couple minutes, is primarily concerned with perceptual bandwidth, which includes some citation of data on the total bit rate of human perception, as well as a model which has been proposed by Aki, I should remember how to pronounce Makivirta, regarding how perception works. It then goes into memory, which is a quite long period, talking again about the concept of bandwidth, this time in respect to the data which goes from our short-term memory into our long-term memory, and asserting that when there is a large amount of information in short-term memory, it does not correctly coagulate into our long-term memory. So again, tilting at the concept that quick iterations are a bad idea. He then moves to his proposed solution, which is the premise that we should have slow listening. So the concept here is that blind comparisons could be useful, but not A/B tests, because according to him, A/B tests must be short duration. However, with long duration listening, blind testing, he feels, could be useful in comparing things. However, he feels that it's not reasonable to expect that he as a reviewer do this, because he does not have an assistant to swap cables or amplifiers or etc. anytime he wants to. The final segment, which runs from about 20 minutes to the end, asserts that the cited AB is actually superior to even the long, slow listening test in terms of identifying specific differences, and also notes that there is, in his perception, a tendency for accurate perceptions to overwhelm biases as your experience goes on with a product. He does conclude, however, by saying that not all products are audibly differentiable to him. So that's
So this is
the
like
Cliff's
kind of,
notes.
if I have a general sense of it, it's that um this might be less about the minutia of tiny little differences and more about the general perception of products that one may come to over time. That this is then sufficient to say, unless I'm misunderstanding, that this is sufficient to say that, you know, this product, you have a bigger grasp of what a given product sounds like, and that's meant to do more than what you might get in the minutia as far as blind testing.
So there's a very specific game of Find the Queen in this video, where he starts off talking about blind ABs. And I should note something that happens at times when people talk about blind testing is that they treat ABX like it's a more stringent form of AB for some reason. That obviously is not the case. The reason that we have ABX is to make it easier for people to differentiate by having two references. But for some reason, again, people treat it like the
No,
hardcore
it's
version of blind AB.
the double blind ABX.
Yeah. The purpose of all of them, however, is to show differentiation, right?
Mhm.
So the only thing that we are statistically doing analysis on in these A/B tests is, can you hear the difference between A and B?
Right.
There
And
are other
really
tests.
quick, I just want to mention that the very first section that he is basically drawing that analogy where he's showing the two pictures and he's like, did you notice this difference and this difference and this difference? How many of the differences did you notice? That is not a good analogy to what blind testing usually is like in audio,
Yeah, it's a
because
terrible
Well,
as
analogy.
you
if you
It
say,
doesn't make
put
any
it
yeah,
between them, you immediately see the difference between them, even if all you noticed is the brightness or all you noticed was one other element. If you see one thing, that's sufficient. But
right,
again, this is
sufficient for audio, but not in the contrived test that he
No, but
came
the,
up.
the
well,
bigger thing is that there's human beings are not similarly auditory creatures the way we are visual creatures. It's a different.
let's leave that aside though, because that doesn't actually impact how invalid this is. The problem here is that he is asserting that A/B testing is not. He's treating A/B testing like all of it is ABX testing. Obviously, A/B
Mm,
testing is just comparing A and
mhm,
B.
mhm.
But assuming we're talking about A/B testing where you are blind and trying to find which is A, it is just an identification game. We have other tests, so-called mushra and other preferential tests, that say, out of these identifiably different things, which is most preferable to you? And
Mhm,
there are a
mhm.
number of statistical analysis approaches there. However, that isn't what he's speaking to. And I think that this is where Griffin and Audiophile feel that this wasn't a video about blind testing, because he essentially shuffles us from the question of can you identify the difference at all between these two things to why fast switching blind testing is, in his view, not able to encompass all of the differences between two things. But this is just comparing unlike things. It's saying that this ship is unsuitable for a land voyage. Right? The purpose of the test is just to show, first off, that you can tell the difference. And that's something he meanders past quite swiftly. Indeed, it's funny to me how many comments he cited which amounted to, I bet you wouldn't hear any difference in a blind test, and then move to, in a blind test, I wouldn't be able to distinguish every single minute detail.
Yeah, my
It's
position
a
on
straw
blind
man.
testing has typically been that less about, so like the blind testing of any kind is highly revealing as to the question of whether or not there is a difference, right? But if you go, say, I'm not talking specifically about, like, DACs and amps necessarily, but like, say, even just among EQ profiles or something where like there is going to be a difference, like pretty clearly, that people will be able to understand or hear. um it the question becomes a bit of a more interesting one when there are multiple things that you were selecting among, to be able to identify what is X, not between two things, but between 3, 4, 5, 6 things. It basically complicates the identification game. And in that scenario, I do see an insufficiency with not having enough familiarity with whatever X is to be able to then go, this one is that for sure. I do see a scenario where that makes sense, but not at all in the is there a difference in answering the question of is there any difference sense. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Which, to be clear, is the bar that the amp and DAC sensitive have yet to clear.
Have yet to clear.
Yeah,
I know,
and
and that's
and there's a hierarchy of proofs, right? Like the most fundamental is that you can differentiate them at all. Because if you can't show that you can differentiate them at all, everything else you say is suspect, right? Or really invalid. Once you've cleared that bar, you move into what differentiates them and why. Like this is the process we went through with Cameron's thing, right? We started with, okay, he can hear a difference between two reconstruction filters. And once we proved that quite rigorously and controlled for as many potential confounding variables as we could, we searched for an explanation for why. But you have to start with, or rather you don't have to, but if you don't start with proving that you can actually differentiate two things, it's very suspect when you make detailed comparisons of them.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, I would never mix up Coke or Pepsi, but if someone was like, I challenge you to do a 20 trial blind test of Coke versus Pepsi, I'd be like, okay, that'd be easy. Sure. Let's do it.
I think that to me, that's sort of the bigger supervening thing about this, where it's a blind testing of any kind is a tool in the toolbox and should be treated as such. And we should use it when
it's
we
a scientific
have the
tool to find the truth.
Yeah. But I think sometimes the windmill that people tilt at, or I don't know, the straw man that gets erected is this is all that matters straw man. For basically blind test proponents or people who are saying it's useful to use blind tests, that gets treated as this is the only thing that you should do, to judge, a product, to judge whatever about it, or to judge the sound.
We do have some animate straw men in our ranks who will respond to things very stupidly. I've seen someone respond to a headphone comparison by saying that in a blind test you wouldn't necessarily prefer one or the other, which misses the point, obviously, that headphones inherently are a physically experiential thing which cannot be blindly compared. It's valid to prefer something more ergonomic, for example.
Well, and in that respect, here is what I wonder about with all of this, right? Like, I think it's pretty straightforward to say that there is a reasonable use case for blind testing, or not even blind test. It is reasonable to control for sound quality, and blind testing is one of the things. What's that?
I forgot to add the card.
Oh, okay. It is reasonable to control for sound quality, and blind testing is one of the tools in that toolbox. But when it comes to people's, overall enjoyment of these products, that's just, we have to acknowledge that that's just one of the factors, right? Whereas, there's all these other things that influence people's appreciation for them, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think so. The subtitle of the video is "The Pitfalls of Blind Testing," and the thumbnail itself is a bit pointed in that I tried to make it fun, but also kind of explicit that the issue a lot of people would have with going into something blind is that they might find the unremarkable but hard to forget truth that the differences just aren't really there, or
at least they aren't big enough to overcome the blind test. But we see what people, in the video, we see what people fall back to there. The assertion is, if I can't hear these huge differences in a blind test, then blind tests must surely have a huge impact. So they've treated the foundational truth.
So they shifted the burden of proof to the blind test.
Yes. Well, that's what Lachlan's video is, right? It's saying, because I can't hear these differences under these circumstances, clearly the effects of blind tests are vast in limiting our perception of audio. So it's flipping the script. It's saying that because the obvious difference between this DAC or that DAC, this cable or that cable can't be heard, clearly the problem lies in the methodology of the test.
So, but here's what I wonder about this is like, at what point, like, this is somebody who is clearly aware of the possibility that there is no, so for a lot of people who are buying expensive cables and waxing poetic about like, or doing the confirmation bias thing or whatever, right? They're not even bothering to try and do any blind testing. They're not even considering the concept of blind testing. They're just like, it makes a difference. I hear this, right? And they're fully cable pilled on whatever it is, right? They're indulging in that part of it. I feel like when you deliberately apply scrutiny to your experiences, you should at least probably question the reality of them. And it feels like that's not happening in this case, right? Where it's, like, you should implicitly hedge against your own experiences when you are going through that process to even bother blind testing in the first place, because that's kind of what it's doing.
Well, wait, what? All right, so sorry, it's something in the chat briefly confused me. The thing is, this is why I wanted to touch. This is why I think this whole video is about blind testing, and why I don't agree with Audiophile or Griffin about that, because I see this as an extended apologia for why he can not trust the experiences that he got in blind testing. He has a fairly complicated argument, which ranges from the switching is too fast and that corrupts things. It takes very long periods to understand how things sound, and includes little riders that don't seem that incoherent until you really think about how they fit into his argument, like the idea that initially you are biased, but over time your perception becomes more accurate for a product. All of which sort of feed into this premise that there is a fundamental existential truth to the experience that you have with a product in the long run.
When we think about like, this gets a little bit to the question of like, how long should you reasonably be expected to listen to a product before coming up with a verdict? And certainly there's a case to be made for spending more time with something where you go through more recordings and you listen to more stuff with the product. That's fine. But I think that I'm forgetting who said it. Might have been actually somebody from 64 Audio who said this, but basically like the first 15 seconds or something like that is the thing that matters the most. And there's, I think there's something, to that if, especially when we're talking specifically about answering the question of, can I hear a difference at all? In which case the immediacy is highly relevant. Like the short term is the thing that is the most revealing.
And we should probably talk a little bit about why that is, right? Like, it's not immediately intuitive to people, but humans have, and Craig Stark, who is a perceptual researcher at UC Berkeley.
Shout outs.
Yes, very, very cool guy, is in chat.
UC Irvine.
Irvine, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say.
Brain.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
No,
also, shouts out.
Yes, they corrected me in chat.
Shouts out to Craig. He actually just did a really good video about IEM ear tips and fit using one of our ear scans as an example, along with his ear and one other ear that I won't.
Who's been ear doxed?
Someone was ear doxed. We don't know who.
Really?
But anyway,
I mean,
in the chat.
Well, tell me who it is. I'm curious.
We're not going to tell you. We're not going to tell you.
No, I'll tell him, just not publicly.
Okay.
So what Craig comments is that ideally we would want to be relying on our echoic memory for doing comparisons, right? So prior even to our short-term memory, we actually have the ability to briefly retain the perception of a sound, right? And testing varies on how long. I've never heard a result that exceeded a minute. This is why very short switching times, which doesn't have to mean short testing times, but the changeover from one to the other being quicker improves people's performance, right? This isn't something that's required. right? Anyone is welcome to construct something where they entirely rely on long-term memory for their comparisons. However, when we have tested people with identifying things we know that they can hear the difference in, be they audible levels of distortion, be they audible level differences, we have found that people are more accurate when they are listening in very rapid succession to two samples that are very comparable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, which makes sense, right? Yeah, in chat, Ikaya says sensory store generally lasts 200 milliseconds to 2 seconds at most. Yeah, exactly. This is really kind of a problem, and it's why we're really shit at comparing things.
Well, but even in the visual example, if you took two different shades of blue and you immediately, like, the difference would be most notable if from swapping from one to the other right away, not
exactly
necessarily.
And doing that, you can perceive, and in fact, there's a phenomenon in this where humans can perceive modulation of SPL at a lower level than we can perceive differences, which is part of how we can perceive differences between two things we rapidly switch between more accurately than we can perceive absolute level differences.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite a, but the thing is, this is often misunderstood. And I think this is something that we need to get better at the messaging on. We usually explain these things giving the best odds scenario for someone who is doing this test to get a positive result. But people, I think that we're doing it the other way, that we're imposing additional strictures on the basis that, we want to limit their ability to succeed.
Right. You're stacking the deck against them.
Yeah. Right. Whereas in fact, we're actually trying to
give
them every possible chance.
Yeah. I hadn't realized that was, I think you're right. I think that's absolutely part of the resistance to all of this, is that all these science people are assholes. They're just,
they think we're trying to gotcha them when actually
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so relevant. It's a good way.
It's something that I realized after a lot of time trying to explain blind testing to people, because and the things that they think are gotchas are always very confusing to me, because we'll have something like, I heard a difference between these two things, and you're like, okay, well, how level matched were they? And it's like between, within 0.5 of a dB. And the answer is, well, yeah, humans can hear that difference. Like that's it's as simple as that. Your result is completely unsurprising. I totally believe you heard a difference. However,
yeah,
if you want to control, if you want to be able to say it's something outside of what we know to cause a difference, then you need controls. And once you've done all those controls, you have pretty poor odds of actually hearing it if it is a small effect, which is why we say do a whole bunch of trials, so that even if it's a subtle thing where you're right 6 and 10 times, if you do 20, 25 trials, that's still accurate, right? Oh, that's actually a huge one people get wrong. I always forget that. I've seen so many people say, what if I'm doing an ABX, but I just get 1 wrong or just get 2 wrong? And then you say, oh, it's not statistically significant. Because they think it's some sort of rule that you have to stop at 10 trials just because 10 was the number picked because it happens to give p under 0.05. Right. So, and I have encountered that before, like people who legitimately thought that the whole thing was attempting to build an impossible to succeed in maze rather than trying to build the most sensitive possible test for what they could hypothetically be hearing. It's just sort of funny and you do run into that a lot.
Yeah, when I was doing the blind A/B testing with the A/B switcher, even when I wasn't doing like selecting for X or whatever, just doing the thing, there were definitely times when I felt like I thought maybe there could be a difference in here, but it would have been so inconsequential to the experience that I just felt it like, why would anybody care about this? But so to me, that indicated like at the very least there is a fairly substantial amount of confirmation bias or whatever else that is the largest sort of attribution of goodness or badness to the experience that people are making about any of these products. specifically because people are not doing that blind A/B switching. So to me, the value in ABX is, or AB or ABX, is less about proving anybody wrong and revealing what matters to you. You know?
Well, and I do want to, so also Akaya notes correctly, I flubbed my words. It's 0.05, not
Yeah.
0.5. For the average, people generally take a 5% chance of being a false positive as an acceptable bar. Personally, I would prefer significantly lower odds.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to clear up that getting one wrong in 10 does not mean that you are statistically insignificant by that bar, which is true. My point, though, is that a lot of people think that if they get a few errors, if they get it
Yeah.
right 7 in 10 times, that they cannot meet that bar, when in fact they could if they did just a few more tests. And that's in fact how we can prove that these very small differences can be differentiable in some cases.
So we're talking, I mean, and this is mostly to do with things like cables and DACs and amps and whatnot, but to me, there is a blind component potentially to EQ profiles, or not EQ profiles, but like toggling EQs on and off.
Yeah, of course.
And one of the things that we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but one of the things that people will often say is, oh yeah, the EQ ruins the technicalities. And I would expect, I can't say for sure that this is why, but my expectation is that this is just because they haven't done two level matched profiles right before, like on and off with pink noise or something like that. And so
Well,
whatever's going on
yeah.
with the EQ is making it quieter, and so it is less preferred.
I mean, it could also be the EQ change they're making is just
is wrong. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like,
making it
yeah. There's
good.
so much scrungle in there, but I am interested in the misattribution. What I feel, at least, is the misattribution here of it made the technicalities worse when in fact it was just a change in SPL, right? An overall level that was prompting their preference of their less preference, or their anti-preference. So there is a sense in which the blind testing reveals what is most relevant, but it is also a source of confusion for people in that scenario, where even though they have the two experiences like immediately available and they can switch between them, it is not a good proxy or not a good test for what they actually prefer.
So
because it does result in this misattribution.
I mean,
See,
so
conjecture.
it depends on kind of what your expectation of the test is in general and how familiar you are with the tool for how useful it can be for like something like EQ. Joel was talking about this a little bit, and I actually think both his approach and his way of verbalizing the approach are very sensible, where whenever he's working with EQ to try to find something that is, the most preferable to him, basically his bar is, I want to get it good enough to the point where between the two changes I'm making, like between EQ profile A and EQ profile B, which are probably going to be slight differences that I'm kind of testing between, instead of just like a Harmon curve versus like a flat DF or something like that.
Yeah.
Like way more.
He's got everything else
harder to
dialed in, and he's
perceive
testing
difference.
one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. When he's doing that, his goal is basically to find the lowest possible difference in preference between the two of them, because then he knows that he is at a point where either the difference itself is not significant to him, or that the rest of the sound is like good enough that,
Sorry, say that again. What do you mean by lowest possible difference?
So like if he's testing between, let's say, a 4 decibel bass boost and a 5 decibel bass boost, right? Like if he doesn't discern a significant preference between those two,
I got you.
it doesn't really matter which one he picks.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But I think that is a expectation and a method when it comes to EQ that isn't really done by a lot of people. Like the surface level is largely people comparing uneq'd to EQ'd to Harmon or something.
You know
like
what though? Like I think that, yeah. I mean, I think that's 100% correct, but I think that's an extremely sensible way of going about it. I'm just trying to think, like, that's kind of what I do but
Well,
like I never thought about it like that.
Well, yeah. Well,
It's
that's
just
why I said it's both what he does and how he verbalizes it.
yeah.
That is good.
Craig
Build a
Stark
strong
in
point.
chat correctly noting that that's called a JND, or just noticeable difference in perceptual research.
Yeah, that reasonable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if anyone would like some data on JNDs as they apply to audio, Zwicker and Fassel's Psychoacoustics, Facts and Models has a surprisingly robust list. It won't tell you how much harmonic distortion you can hear, because that's not something you can make an easy JND model for, but
Yeah.
it will tell you quite a lot of things.
Okay, I have a question for you guys.
JND's
Just
nuts. Sorry.
To out. Get out. Yeah, you had to. So to get back to the blind ABX, or just blind AB with DACs and amps, for example, when people report a positive result of some kind, in the rare instances that they do, how much of this do you think is potentially real versus not having done the test correctly, as in like there is not a good level match?
What
For example,
well, among people hearing differences in DACs?
well, what I'm wondering is like how. So when setting up a test to do blind A/B switching, it's not always the easiest to get it to be perfectly level matched, right? And I feel like a lot of people are getting it close enough when really that's not actually close enough. Because you can hear very, very small differences in SPL, or you could that could make something discernible. And what I'm
Oh
wondering
yeah,
is
I
it
mean, almost 100% of
yeah.
the, like, I'd say probably, if it was not for Cameron, I would say probably 100% of
Well,
all tests that I've seen on the internet
yeah,
have been
is something
in
like
that
that. Yeah.
camp.
And that's why the Cameron example is interesting, because we still don't know if we still don't know if there is actually any difference in those DACs apart from what he was able to hear above 20 kilohertz in the reconstruction filters, right? So that's the variable that's not eliminated. That was
Yes.
the yeah. So to me, this is, if anything, this is just highly this points at all of this points at blind test stuff being one of the most useful tools that we can have, because it can it can basically reveal, okay, this is what's causing the change, right? When in instances when we do have these, in the rare instances when people do find differences.
Yes. So I mean, well, again, this is all contingent on our reference frame, right? Our reference frame for this is, we want evidence that this exists at all. I don't think that for Lachlan there is any doubt whatsoever in his mind that these effects exist. So his analysis is in the context of what allows me to accurately subjectively compare these two devices that I know sound different. And in that
Yeah.
capacity, a blind ABX is not the optimal approach. However, to
The
be taken
premise is wrong.
seriously, it's a prerequisite, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of just assuming that what we are disputing is the case.
It really it comes down to like that base default assumption that people have of this amplifier costs a certain amount. It has a sound. It is supposed to have a sound. That, as soon as you eliminate that, that
Yeah,
the game changes.
unfortunately, that kind of certainty does kind of just poisons a lot of the content he does. It's such a shame too, because he's clear, like, and I think Blaine and I kind of disagree on this a little bit, but he's clearly a guy that like is interested enough in audio to go combing through science stuff, but it tends to only be to support what he's saying and not because he's super interested in the conclusions that he's going to find.
So here is I'm trying to think of what the steel man here would be, apart from what Blaine has erected, which is, if you already assume this, right, to be true, then you run into those problems. But
well, that depends on if we're steel manning the argument or the man, right?
no. So when I think of this, my brain for some reason goes to something that Andrew Lissamore actually talked about a long time ago, which was the idea of like disregarding focusing, or not disregarding, but like not uniquely focusing or not controlling specifically for auditory perceptual changes, but something like cortisol levels or some other thing that a blind test would actually be insufficient to um, to indicate, because a blind test is meant to control for the sound aspect, right? So what if you're able to A/B, not blind, and then is there a difference in cortisol or whatever, something to
Well,
do
no, I
with
mean, the thing is, we know people will like if you did an fMRI on someone
yeah
listening cited
yeah
to
yeah yeah
two different DACs, they believe to be different. And I mean, admittedly, an fMRI can get very noisy and you can do a lot of tea leaf reading. But let's assume for a moment that that's entirely accurate. You would almost certainly find some difference because they perceive a difference, right?
yeah
Their
yeah
perception is not a falsehood. It's just
and
about where it comes from.
where it comes from, and I think that's really like that's the best case scenario, or the best argument against using blind testing, at least to me, that I can think of, is that where when people are buying these products, they are not using them in blind conditions. And therefore, the thing that actually matters is supposing you could actually like measure, with whatever, use an EKG or whatever, a person's enjoyment levels between two different devices, and switching between the two devices would reveal that there are some differences there, when in a blind controlled, like controlling just for the sound quality test, it would not. So it's like, well, what's the what actually matters here? Ultimately it's the enjoyment that the person gets from the experience. And so in that respect, it's like, no, it's not the useful tool for that. However, the way I see it is, when we're evaluating these products and when we're judging them to be good or bad with respect to sound quality, this absolutely fucking matters, right? Because you have to isolate for that variable, so you're not being primed by whatever else. You can talk about all the other things. You can say, "Oh, it's red. I like red," or this has this sick volume knob or whatever. All that shit matters. All that shit is highly, relevant to the experience. The issue is that people are making these purchase decisions based around assumptions of sound quality that disappear when under these controlled conditions. And that, I think, is the problem.
I think part of this also stems, and this is something that was implicitly asked in what was going to be our next topic, but part of this is a question of what an audio review constitutes. What is the responsibility of the reviewer? How much of the onus is placed on them to be disclaiming all of the potential sources of inaccuracy? And I mean, Lachlan has rejected the title of reviewer because he specifically doesn't feel that he should be held to those standards, right? Like his view, I
Incredibly
think,
based behavior, by the way.
yeah, I mean, his view, I
Yeah.
think, is that he is someone who gives his experience, right?
I'm not a reviewer because reviewers are stinky.
Well, I'm not a reviewer because reviewers are attempting to be factual, whereas I'm attempting to give an
Yeah.
experiential report on my actual experience with a product. I think that would be my stylization of his position. And if that's wrong, then Cameron might be able to call me on that. But that's how I had parsed that distinction he was drawing.
And in that respect, doing the whole, experiential bit of comparisons cited makes perfect sense. In which case, I don't know why. I suppose the issue is really with the charge against the blind testing, not so much with the approach of experience versus experience comparing two products, right?
Well, here's the problem as I sees it. Lachlan finds himself in a position of, are you aware of the phrase Maud Bailey?
Yeah.
It's an internet debate
Yeah.
term, which is just a rephrasing of the term bait and switch.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's presenting a weaker argument and then retreating to a stronger argument. The argument that Lachlan is not a reviewer and is not attempting to be a purveyor of true analysis of things, but is simply giving his own experiential reports of things that he has enjoyed or not enjoyed, is a strongly defensible position. You may have an ethical complaint about that, but it makes his actions completely coherent. Hi,
Sorry,
Cameron.
we have one Cameron here. I'm just going to add him to the.
Oh, he
embed.
joined. Oh, what's up, my
I'm gonna
guy?
give you another embed here.
No,
He's not audible
embed's good.
yet.
Embed's good. Embed's
Is it?
good. Yep. At least in my ping. Yeah, no, he's in.
I'm only here for a little bit. I just wanted to come and join the blind testing bit. Then.
Can you guys see
Thank you.
Cameron?
Yes.
I know you can. I'm asking chat.
Yeah, no,
They can see him. I'm
watching
watching the
the
stream.
video.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm watching the stream. He's there. What's up, Cam?
I don't know. Have you done a blind test to determine whether I'm there? Or
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Great entrance.
I was
I
going to
mean,
jump in and say, like,
yeah.
I think the big issue with a lot of blind testing stuff is that there's a lot of people that are against blind tests because they're afraid of what it might tell them. That it might turn out that they can't hear things that they think they can hear. But this also leads people to, when they do blind tests, because earlier someone was asking about, what percentage of blind tests are actually sort of, blind tests. And I genuinely can't think of the last video I watched or forum report that I saw where the blind test was conducted properly. And that's a problem, because it then gives people a bit of a sort of false positive almost in a lot of cases, because they'll say, I did a blind test and I was able to hear this. It's like, okay, well, you didn't control it properly, so actually it wasn't a blind test at all.
Yes. Well, and I think that they do perceive that as moving the goalposts. I've heard that claim a lot from those people, and that's
a fair description, I think.
I don't think so, because what is meant when we suggest a blind test to hear differences is not a blind test to see if you can hear the differences between a level mismatch. But the thing is that because these people, before they do these things, don't actually sufficiently research what we know to be audibly different, they don't control for things, and then are surprised when people say that doesn't demonstrate anything other than what we already know.
Well, a lot of them, I've seen multiple times, people say, well, it was mostly blind, so it's still better than just regular testing.
Yes, that's...
Yeah.
Ugh.
I was
Sorry.
going to say the most prominent one I think of is, and I'm not trying to call... should I say the channel? Or?
Yeah, roast him, drag him.
Jay-Z, Yagi, and GR Research one, where they did a blind test between speaker cables, but he was still in the room when they were changing cables. So just based on how long it took Jay to move the cables, the sound of the cables plugging in and unplugging and stuff, that alone could have been a giveaway. If you watch the video, actually, it does look like there is a little bit of a gap between the rack and the speakers where you can just see the cable being used. They only did 5 runs as well. So even if I think it was 5. I'm pretty sure there was 5.
Something like that.
Correct,
it was less
wrong,
than it was less than even a 5% chance of false positive levels.
Yeah, the result that they got was not statistically significant, but was still being treated as such. And these kind of problems show up a lot. The not doing enough runs one is pretty prominent. I've seen ones where people did, well, I did it 3 times and I got every single one.
This isn't even an accusation of them trying to test in bad faith.
No, this is
people
not
just don't seem to understand binomial probability.
Yeah.
No, this is not any kind of accusation of bad faith at all. It's just to illustrate the point that there are a lot of sort of resources online, be it videos from reviewers or stuff from manufacturers or just posts on forums and stuff where people claim to have done blind tests. And I'm sure in some cases it may be because they've intentionally chosen to do things wrong, but in most cases it's just because they might not have realized the controls that they would have needed to implement. And the end result is that it's not a controlled blind test. It's a cited test with some obstructions, basically.
Yep. I did want to just get back around to my Mod and Bailey comment, because this is the thing I was going to say, is that I think that Lachlan can reasonably take the position that what he wants to do, what he sets out to do, is give an account of his experience, right? And if that's all he wants to do, and that's all he represents himself to do, it's very hard to indict him, right? I mean, you can say, oh, I don't think people should be sharing their experiences online, but I would say that's maybe a fringe position.
It's a bad take is what it is.
But the fact that he responds when people say, I think that there's a factual error, means that a lot of the time he's very comfortable thinking and operating as though he's giving people truths about the world, if he really bought into the "I'm not a reviewer, what I say isn't peer reviewed," etc., he would never make a video such as this. And
Yeah,
that,
I
I
think
think, is where I see the trouble.
yeah, he would not
the
be
issue
couching the assertions in anything resembling science or studies or papers or anything like that. Yet we have seen he does this.
Yeah, I think the issue I would sort of say that I might have with luck and stuff is that, like, if it's just a purely subjective review, I wouldn't find a purely subjective review of most products to be as useful as ones that actually contain, you know, proper objective testing and stuff as well. I would like to have both. I wouldn't like just one or the other in most cases. But, you know, if you're just wanting to provide an experiential report, that's fine. I think the bits where it's a little more contentious for me is the videos where it's not even actually talking about a product, it's talking about a, you know, concept or theory, often based on sort of one of these papers and stuff. And I would say giving unfair credence to quite a lot of stuff, or not pointing out, or maybe not being aware of the flaws in some of the stuff and material that's being discussed.
We can specifically say that Milan Kuncher is an absolute quack.
Yeah,
Like, I am willing to own that take in public.
I was going to say he's controversial, but honestly, I don't even think controversial is a fair word. I think quack.
Well, I don't know. Maybe a little bit. There's a few vocal cable proponents who will regularly cite Kuncher as the.
There are a few vocal
but they're
bleach drinking
citing him
proponents who will
because
regularly cite people on the internet too.
they're citing Kuncher because what he's showing shows that there are differences in cables which don't actually relate to audibility. This is the thing about his paper says nothing about audibility, and the differences in cables that he is showing in that paper, we already know. It's all transmission line effects at really high frequencies, and this is why.
Have you seen the follow-up paper where he did a test which didn't properly level match and used two different cable lengths and concluded that people could hear a difference in his blind test?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's like if there's a paper saying like, well, we're going to see, does the effect of using, you know, different tire treads matter on cars or whatever, but you test one of them in the wet and one of them in the dry. It's like, well, yeah, okay, so we don't actually know if it makes a difference if you're in the same conditions or not, because we know that yes, tire tread makes a difference if you're in the wet, but if you're driving in the dry, it doesn't. Yeah, it's there isn't actually a fair link to call to audibility from that paper is the problem, and all of the things that he talks about is stuff that we already understand to the extent that, you know, a lot of devices, including many of the things that people in here are going to be using, are designed with these effects in mind. That's why an SPDIF cable has a particular characteristic impedance, but you don't need to bother with that for an analog RCA cable.
So somebody
okay, well, it would, to be fair, I guess it would depend on how long.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about, like, you know, if you're trying to run a cable across a stadium. I'm talking about like real scenarios.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing, and that's where a lot of times that's one of the reasons that I always jump on people when they say you can't measure the difference between cables, because it's wrong. You can.
Yeah.
However, the differences that you can measure are immensely small.
Well, they're either immensely small or just so far outside the realm of what could potentially be,
within the audio band.
Yeah, like if we were seeing differences at, you know, 100 kilohertz or whatever, and then you could start to make arguments about, whilst, you know, we can't hear 100 kilohertz, maybe there's some intermodulation or something going on in terms of the amplifier,
the phase shift,
there's some other effects. But if you're talking about stuff at, you know, 2 gigahertz, no.
Well, and that's the same thing as if you're talking about, I mean, like, this is a point I've raised. Cables technically should, we very seldom, if ever, have measured this, but should have distortion, right? Because any resistor that has nonlinear resistance with voltage, which is anything that heats, is a distortion mechanism. So is that something we should worry about? And the answer is, of course, fucking not, because it's so low that we have probably never measured it. It would be extremely hard to even contrive a measurement setup to measure it. But we know from theory that it should exist, and we know that those things do exist in other components, but all of them are so low that we can safely write them off. It's kind of an issue I have with one Rob Watts, actually, vis-a-vis minus 300 dB.
Oh, right.
Well, you can talk to him about it at CanJam next week.
I mean, I don't necessarily mind stuff where it's like, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily on board with the audibility claims, but At the same time, I don't mind if something is an improvement for the sake of having an improvement, even if it's there's no way to show that it's audible or whatever. You know, if there's, I mean, you can make the
Well, it's
argument
like
for, you know, even
FLAC
people who
versus
are
320.
chasing. Sorry, say that again.
It's like FLAC versus 320.
Well, I mean, that I would argue is audible. And
Sure, it's audible, but how much
That-
does it
well,
really matter?
It's not even arguable. Objectively, at least for
better,
every
yeah.
codec I'm aware of, uncompressed audio can be differentiated from 320 with the correct sample.
Sure.
How consistently will vary by the sample.
Yeah.
But like the cable thing or the minus 300 dB thing, that's more of a case of like, we're pretty sure it isn't audible. But you know, for this, if you can make it better, then why the hell not?
Well, I can think of a number of reasons why the hell not.
Like
then you end up chasing erroneous metrics, and it starts building a cult around. It's a different kind of snake oil, right?
Maybe, but at the same time, then it's like, well,
like I don't have a problem with people doing it, but it's a bit like that one guy who replaced the power pole. You know,
replace the what?
Oh, he replaced the power line that was going to his house.
Oh, the Japanese guy.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I suppose that's a more ridiculous example, but like situations where the improvement is purely academic, right? That's what you're talking about. Where there is a, you know, like a distortion is a great example of this, like harmonic distortion, generally. Like it really is something that, like, how much do we have a reason to care about this when it's not audible in you're comparing two products that's not audible in both cases? Why? Yeah, one is technically better because it is, you know, lower in harmonic distortion, but that's not something, if it's not audible in either case, even with EQ, say for example, then the worry that I have there is people, if you basically start caring or over focusing on the fact that it's better for harmonic distortion, then this starts to prompt people to look at this as a qualifier, or as a you know, ranking metric. And haven't we seen those before? You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that that's good, regardless of whether it is something which is absolutely 100% super audible or something which is just outright not. So I think that that's kind of a universal issue. The problem with cables, though, is that, you know, we're talking about something where it's an immensely small factor. And as Blaine said, yeah, they will have some amount of distortion, but the point is that it's so low that it basically can't be measured and is kind of pointless to worry about. And the issue I have is that whilst, like, the chord stuff, for example, they can talk about this minus 300 dB thing because it is true. Might not matter, but it is true. Whereas the cable stuff, there's a lot of really expensive cables where they could be worse. We don't know.
This is true.
Like, there's no guarantee at all. And in fact, it's quite likely in many cases that spending more is not going to get you a better result. So there, it's not even a case of, is it a purely academic improvement? It's a case of, you've spent money on something which looks pretty, but that doesn't mean it's actually better, even in just a purely academic sense.
Someone in chat, Gumi Supremacy, says, can companies just sell expensive cables and not say snake oil stuff?
That would be good.
That would be perfectly acceptable, in my view.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, here's an example. Brule and Kiar charges $1,000 for a BNC cable. They don't claim it's a super good cable. It's just that if you want to buy a cable from them, that's how much they charge.
We're busy. We've got things to do. If you want us to spend time making you a cable, that's how much it costs.
Exactly. So I think, and I do think we sort of merge together. And this is one of the reasons that I'm cautious about calling some things that I think are not real effects on the sound snake oil. Like some things that accord, some things, you know, the Mola Mola DAC, you know, the various things where there's an impressive product in terms of how it measures in some respect, or there's some trait to it which is unique and it's factually provably true, but it doesn't necessarily affect the sound.
And in many of those cases, there is an overreach to audibility that has not been demonstrated.
Yes.
I would argue that an overreach to audibility does not qualify something as snake oil. That's the differentiator for me. Snake oil is something which claims to be doing something and is doing nothing. So cables, I would say, in many cases,
I think that is also snake oil.
Yeah,
well,
I would classify
classical
both of
definition.
them.
In the classical definition, snake oil referred to literal
Yeah.
snake oil, right? Which did do
Yeah.
something. It just didn't do what it was advertised for. I'm sure it's a good source of B12 or whatever.
So
delicious.
Oxford's defining it as a product policy of little real worth or value that is promoted as a solution to a problem. So in that case, yeah, you would be right.
Leave it to the British guy to pick the Oxford definition.
I much prefer Oxford to Merriam-Webster, to be honest.
I do too.
I think the way that I tend to use it, even though it seems like that's not the actual dictionary definition, is that like something is snake oil if it's claiming to be better at or do something, then it's not. So something like
your
a power
definition is
conditioner.
false advertising.
Yes, basically, or
So-
not false, not necessarily even false advertising, but just
deliberately deceptive.
Unsubstantiated potentially.
But in
like
that case,
something-
unsubstantiated does extend to the overreaches to audibility, right? Because those
I guess
are
what I mean
genuinely
is like
unsubstantiated.
if I wouldn't consider something like the chord minus 300 dB noise shaper or a power conditioner that is doing exactly what it says on the tin, but just may not have an audible improvement in your system or whatever. I don't consider those to be snake oil because they are actually doing what they claim to. And to be honest, whether it's snake oil or not would also depend on the specific, according to that definition, depend on the wording of the marketing. If their
Yeah, it
marketing
depends
is
on
saying
what they claim.
it's
It
accurate
depends on what
minus
they
300
claim.
dB, that ain't snake oil. If they're saying this
but-
makes your transients better or whatever, then maybe it is.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but then this is similar to I won't say what company this is, but there's a claim about a given driver style of doing a driver where it does the high frequency stuff, like a lot more high frequency basically in level, and the claim is something along the lines of this is going to lead to better experiences, like more resolving, etc., like because it can do all of this stuff. Now what they're claiming is technically true. The driver does do it. This seems to be an inherent characteristic of that driver.
Yeah, it has a wide high frequency bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. However, the overreach is that this is something that is the implication that this is something that is preferred, that this actually makes sound quality better, right? And there is no evidence provided naturally that this is the case in whatever this marketing copy is. So is that something that we would kind of put into that same bucket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you talking about
There's a lot of
guess
things.
so.
A lot of things like that.
So here's something. Let me put forward to you what I view as the bar for responsible marketing, right? If I made a headphone that had a very low acoustic impedance, and there's some evidence that independent of FR, there may be an effective acoustic impedance on sound, I would not make promises on that unless I had data to point to that said, yes, this is going to make an experiential difference to people.
Yeah,
I'd say, this is good for the reasons that I can show it's good. And these are my hypotheses about why it could be good for other reasons.
Yeah, it turns out that marketing doesn't do so well when you hit them with the hypotheses.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you can't...
It should. Like, I'd be curious to try that. Like, in our space, would that work?
I think it would be refreshing to people, honestly.
It'd be some grassroots groundswell kind of stuff, and I like that, right? Like, actually, a good example of this is, well, it's adjacent to Jason Stoddard. Kind of, right? The style of marketing is very much under the noise.
Yeah, I mean, Stoddard has always worn his feet of clay on his sleeve, if you'll pardon me.
Yeah. So maybe it could work. It's just that traditionally that's...
I just worry
people...
about like sort of over applying the term snake oil a bit, because otherwise, going by that definition, you could call basically all speakers snake oil, because just by like the lack of information about preference we have on directivity or whatever, you could argue that therefore all marketing around speakers pretty much is snake oil. Even though
I would actually... Okay, so there's a rhetorical position and a factual position here. Factually, I would absolutely sign off on a commanding majority of all marketing in hi-fi, like 90+% is snake oil. However, rhetorically, it's useful to confine snake oil to the more extreme cases because it alienates people when we overuse
like
that word.
Snake oil and extra virgin snake oil.
But okay, there is a sense in which You know how, Blaine, you do the bit about like, well, whenever I say something is bad, there's an implicit assumption there that this is my opinion that it's bad. D- do we not do this? Can we not do this with marketing? Right? Like what the manufacturer says about what this driver type is doing is technically true. It is demonstrably true. It is shown to be true. Their overreach to its impact positively on sound quality is just their opinion, man. And then, like it's okay that they put it in there because we should expect that that's just their opinion, man. Otherwise they wouldn't do this shit.
Well, so that depends on, and this is important. This actually would definitely vary from a legal standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Like advertisements have to delineate between factual claims and things that aren't, right? If you make false factual claims in an advertisement, you are technically potentially guilty of a number of potential crimes.
I can
Admittedly, I'm not
imagine a
sure the
few.
SDC will be getting on you in the near term, but someday they might. Like that's why we have things like the amplifier rule, right? Well, that's an FTC one, admittedly, which is kind of weird, but anyway. So there are actually, I mean, because we live in a society that has bottom text, we live in a society that has some expectation that commercial promises can be trusted, and that if they aren't, then people need to be held accountable. Now, in practice, the question is, how distinct is a company's claim from what Bob says,
Yeah.
And since a lot of these companies are just Bob in his garage, it's easier to claim that that's just a person's individual experience.
Right.
But
I would say this extends to the more scientifically oriented parts of the community as well, where people are focusing on data and measurements and making completely unsubstantiated claims about the performance of a given product when nothing has been demonstrated for the benefits of audibility or the benefits of subjective preference. Even when we're talking about something that's like demonstrably audible with frequency response, I can think of, well, I'm not going to say who it is, but
Say who it is.
no, I'm not going to.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm thinking of situations where basically like something can be shown to perform better in one way. It looks by all conventions that we would like something that we should assume to be better, but it has not been demonstrated to actually. There is no evidence that it actually is better because in those examples there is no there's no testing that's actually been done.
Yeah, I just like. I think we kind of it's doing a disservice and is potentially, I would argue, unfair to manufacturers if we lump into the same bucket the manufacturers that are doing something different, and they may feel that it has a certain benefit and they can demonstrate objective differences at the very least, and in many cases those might be objective improvements just without a proof of audibility or proof of any kind of meaningful improvement stemming from it. I think that's totally fine, and if people want to spend money on that, and if the manufacturers want to do that, I think that's good. The stuff that we shouldn't lump into the same bucket is the products where, in many cases, not only are they quite demonstrably not doing the very thing that they claim to do, but in many cases may even just be outright making that same thing worse. Those, I think, are a much more dangerous form of extra virgin snake oil rather than the fluffy marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a continuity here, and there's also the question of when people know they're making false claims. Like, I mean, the infamous case, and this is quite a long time ago, was a cable sold by, I believe, JPS, which was found to literally be a wrap around an off-the-shelf cable, and which was repeatedly claimed not to be until it was conclusively identified to indeed be. Like that's a case of you can demonstrably prove this person does not think that their cable is better than the $5 cable because it is the $5 cable.
Isn't that like fraud?
So this is an interesting question. I will say I would be very cautious about saying that someone else committed fraud because that itself could be legally actionable. Right. So
and none of us are lawyers, to be very clear.
Yeah. I would not probably jump to saying that's fraud, but I would say that I would be very unhappy with a company doing that.
It's
Yeah.
dislikable behavior at the very least.
There's nobody like that, is it?
Yeah, nobody like that.
So, what was the? I remember there was a response to that, but I don't remember what it actually was, like from those guys.
I
So-
could. Oh, you go ahead.
Well, we can go through the whole saga, but it was essentially a series of double downs with the other people
Right.
successively contacting the manufacturer and in the end actually talking to the engineers in charge of that department, who apparently were highly amused that their product was apparently worth $1,000. No, it was a series of demonstrable lies.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they first, I believe, claimed that it was, a custom-made cable and was not an OEM one. Someone opened one up and showed that it was an OEM one. Then I believe they said that, oh, well, it is made by that OEM manufacturer, but they're making like a one-off special thing for us.
Oh, okay.
And then someone contacted that company, and the company said, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. Lovely.
So, yeah, just kind of kept doubling down until it was pretty conclusive that that's not what was going on.
Some people just want to dig all the way to the Earth's core.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were at Munich, we went to the Telos audio booth. And this is the company, by the way, that sells quantum stickers. It's a sheet of stickers for like $300, which you get a warranty card for just in case your stickers stop quantuming. And they also have
Lifetime warranty.
Yes. The warranty card probably costs more to make than the stickers. I think it's made of metal. But they also sell like cables and quantum noise resonating boxes and stuff. But they have this one cable, which is like a power cable with this massive, like 1 foot by half a foot box in it, with this enormous capacitor and a bunch of sort of like clever looking circuit boards. And they've scrubbed all of the markings off all of the ICs, obviously. And if you actually take a close look at the PCB, a lot of them aren't connected to anything at all. It's like, it's just literally a bunch of circuitry there to look like it's doing something. And I mean, there's some of them where it's, some companies I do think, make some silly stuff because the people behind it do genuinely think that it makes a difference. And then there are some companies which go, God, this is a good grift, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
it's
Wait, when I go to their site, it says official test reports proves that Quantum X2 exclusive formula is not harmful to humans as it is unleaded and free from highly polluted elements. That's one of those things where when you put that warning or put that note up, I kind of get more worried. It'd be like if you said asbestos free on your cereal.
Well,
I
it
would
wasn't
choose the
concern.
one that is
No,
asbestos free, right? I mean, it's a little bit like what's happened with the whole certified organic thing, where there's so many different certifications that mean different things.
Same thing happened with like fair trade and stuff, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Unfortunately,
People love their little icons on things.
They
I
do.
mean, obviously, the Japan Audio Society sells theirs.
There was the company Synergistic Research. This is the
Yeah.
one that
course.
they have the like acoustic dots, and they sell
Friends of the
$300
program,
fuses. and
Synergistic
stuff.
Research.
He's joking.
I'm still a fan of Cable Full of Sand.
Yeah. Well, Synergistic literally has a product called Voodoo, which is kind of funny. But there is an interview with the founder, and the founder literally sort of said that he came up with the idea for the company when he didn't have a job at the time, and he was high on mushrooms.
There you go.
So I don't know. They've not put out any of this research, but maybe there's something.
How are we supposed to
out.
verify that it's synergistic?
Well, it says research in the name, aren't you?
And
Trusting
it
that
says
they're doing a good
synergistic
job?
in the name too. Yeah.
I
Shall
mean,
we move
Yeah,
on
that's
to?
Moldy Fault Town.
We've
Sure.
beaten this horse before. Shall we move on to? What's the
I got
next
it.
topic here? Yeah.
So the next topic we're going to move to comes from the forum, which if you want to suggest topics for us to discuss in these videos here, go ahead and check out the forum linked in the video description. That thread has been a continuous, lively source of topics for us, but we could always use more. So if
Is
you
our
can,
chat saying that it's based that Synergistic won't share any of their research because
It is
they're
based.
right, but also I feel like we've created a bad culture.
Bold of
Yeah.
you to assume they have research.
Anyway, so the next
they
topic
have shared it.
comes from Michael James on the forum, and it is how much should viewers be trusted to understand that a reviewer's experience might differ from their own, or that language limitations might result in differences of understanding? And then a corollary to this is how much caveating is necessary for a review to be responsible
Good
to
question.
its viewers?
So I have a bit
I'm-
of a problem with all of this stuff, because you could have the entire video be just a series of caveats and explainers without actually talking about the product, and it would be it would be endless. You could just
So here's
That's
the
what some
thing.
people think our
Sorry,
content
I'm
is.
going to head off because I need to get
Let's-
back to editing. So I'm
Okay.
going to see you
All
guys in a
right.
bit.
Thank you
Okay.
for
I would just
joining us.
quickly
Thank
say
you,
on
Cameron.
the topic though, just before I go. You need to make a caveat if there's something which like will change something for everyone, something about how you're using the product. You don't need to put caveats repeatedly if it's just a case of your experience might differ. That's my thoughts. See you
Okay.
guys in a bit.
So here's the thing, Andrew. People kind of already think that
I
about some
know,
of our
it's true.
content,
It's true.
and there was a lot of discussion around the Arya Unveiled video you just did about being a really good example of more caveat than content. And
Well, we knew it was gonna. We knew that video review required doing some of that, because otherwise,
I'm not sure that's true. Like I think we knew it was going to be like something
So
where
the-
because of your perspective on it.
yeah,
it
and
needed
that's
that.
what it is.
But
What was
I
exciting
don't think a
to me
review of
about
that
it.
headphone.
Yeah, no. I get what you're saying. Yeah, we're same page. Like a review of that headphone didn't need to be that, but it's the only thing that I found interesting about it. So that's what I wanted to talk about. You know?
I feel like I wish you had
Otherwise,
said
it's an
like
aria.
that.
Like, what the
like I wish you had actually said like I'm talking about this because this is like
yeah.
otherwise it's not all that interesting compared
No,
to
it's just another
it's
one of
still
the
another
unveils. It's an
Hi-Fi
aria.
Man, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
is this interesting thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely some discussion about that video kind of drowning in disclaimers a little bit, which I could
So,
see.
from my perspective, a large part of like the things that I'm actually genuinely interested in when it comes to communicating things to the audience is way more about trying to improve people's understanding of these devices generally.
Yeah,
I think that's
that's where you and I align, but it's also why I think a lot of people don't love our review. Well, no, a lot of people like your review style. A lot of people don't like my review style.
yeah. I mean, they're not that familiar with it because you haven't done many.
I still get plenty of pushback.
But no, like the stylistic differences would be more along the lines of like trying to think about like, okay, like how is when it comes to the question of like responsibility, right? The big one there for me is like the recognition that I'm only ever listening on my own two ears. I have my own preferences, and this could be different for different people, and I have to consider that. It's just something as simple as like I have a big head, other people don't. Like I need to recognize that. I need to explain. Yeah, like something is uncomfortable for me. Also, you should know that my head is a little on the larger side. It's reasonable. So I think there is an element of like in order to put out something responsible, to be responsible when you're reviewing, you need to caveat to a certain extent.
Right. So like bringing it back to the way the question is asked is that we should not trust the viewers to know these things. Like we need to be explicit about these things would be your position.
Chat seems to be unified in the position that you should make a singular caveat video and then reference it briefly, but not
Doesn't
caveat
work
throughout the video.
We tried.
Well, hold on. Are you basing the doesn't work on people still disagree with the approach and like don't like are negative in comments or whatever? Because I actually do think it would work in that you wouldn't have to take up valuable minutes in a video or valuable lines on a page with that.
No. I think it just depends on what it is that you're talking about, because there's so many things where what you're talking about, where the disclaimers, as mentioned, the disclaimers are the thing that you're trying to communicate, right? Or the caveats are the thing that are the interesting thing about the product or whatever it
Mm.
is, because its goodness and badness is contained within how it relates to the caveats that every headphone review should have. Right, it's or that every not should have should be should have implied, right? Because oftentimes you don't make it explicit, right? When I'm reviewing a headphone that is less about things like its acoustic impedance and its the HRTF or HPTF variation or whatever, if I'm just reviewing a headphone normally, I don't feel those are things I need to communicate to the audience. But when there's something specifically interesting about how consistently a headphone behaves, I feel it's worth talking about. And the same is true for like headphones, like with respect to EQ, right? Like this is something that like I can get on my soapbox and make a dedicated video to talking about this, because people still don't seem to fucking understand this, right? That it is a better headphone where the EQ that you do is minimal, and that's what we're saying when we're talking about EQ. Right, we're not saying every headphone can be amazing with EQ. There are good and bad headphones, but some of them are better than others because it is easier to EQ them. That like I'm fine making the video about that, because if that's the interesting thing about the product.
Right. The thing is, I think it's true for both of us, but I'm really only speaking for myself here, is that I have a tendency, and Blaine has called me out on this show before for this, but I have a tendency to just kind of, because that's the thing I'm interested in, that's just what the review ends up being about. Like, I have a tendency to do that, and I've been trying to kind of, because the things I find interesting about a headphone is something that's a tendency that's shared by like 1% of audiophiles, not even 1% of consumers, 1% of already nerdy audiophiles.
100%. And this is the problem. I think it's like at a certain point, like how much do you care about putting into the content that you're putting out the improvements that you're trying to make to the community, right? Like if you're trying to inflict improvement on community understanding, right? That wording is a bit aggressive, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, so like hold on. So the most recent example I think I have of this is the Moondrop Edge review, where like yes, it's a good headphone, sounds good, and like obviously it's a wireless headphone, so there's a bunch of talk about the features that kind of has to be there so people know what's up. But there is obviously a whole sound section, all of that stuff is in there. But I did dedicate one cordoned off, not in the table of contents section, for the nerd shit, for me to have my little thing where I talk about
a thing that says nerd shit, and then
I mean, it could be useful, but I talk about kind of the effect that that engaging active noise canceling has on the acoustic impedance of the headphone, yada yada yada. No one cares except for me, but so that gets a section that is like far removed, and for someone who's like just glancing through it and probably isn't going to see. I think for like a video, it's a little bit tougher, especially when it's like the thing that is interesting about the product.
Yeah,
how to demarcate that, but.
You guys are the kids in class who are always trying to make the essay about what you want to write rather than what you were assigned.
I am I was that kid in class. I would not write the essay if I didn't do that. Like,
yeah, same. I used to write I used to write about what was assigned, and then I just sort of stopped caring because what was assigned was stupid. Like, okay, here's the thing with all of this though. You do have to meet the audience where they're at a certain level. You have to, provide people what they've come to expect from a review, even if what they've come to expect from a review is like the top of the iceberg, and what you're interested in is at the bottom, right? Or something like that.
Well, I think there's a way to integrate the two. It's just, again, I think it's really tough when
I actually don't know.
A headphone like that actually isn't that great or that interesting, except in the very specific nerdy way that is.
So I actually don't know. I think that there are certain expectations that people, because of, we've talked about this to a certain extent before, but because of the way that people sort of assume the wrong things people assume about audio get sort of taken on board as just this general truism. They expect certain things from reviews that a responsible review would not provide. And in that sense, you actually do have to be combative with the audience. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do. It's like, so to go back to Blaine's thing about like not doing the essay that's assigned, we're actively rejecting the premise of the essay that's assigned. And I think that's required.
Yeah. So like obviously look, there's an extent to which I agree because for one, I already kind of have this combative or disagreement overall with the state of the community. So I feel like that's just how I want to go about being a reviewer, is kind of challenging people on what they think. But
will listener change his hair to fit Mark Carney's haircut?
Mark Carney
is the new potential. It's the new candidate for the Liberal leadership.
Yep. Also former
the
head
Canadian
of the Bank
Prime
of England
Ministership.
and also the Canadian Central Bank, the only man to have been in charge of 2 central banks, I believe.
Yeah. Although
What is
he
that
won't be the next prime minister, most likely. It's going to be Poilievre.
Yes,
so.
I'm gonna run on the platform. You can call me the sane economist.
I just thought it was because Blaine was angry.
I thought
this is an interesting one.
Is it anger or craziness, Blaine?
So
Yes.
you parsed it correctly. The pun is on mad scientist because of the Futurama bit of economics is not a real science and it never will be. That whole thing.
Got it.
Which you hear, you get sent that clip a lot when you major in econ, by the way. But I think that the double entendre is actually quite fun. Like, I like that it's both. It can be read as anger or insanity.
Yeah,
sure.
Both of which are probably true.
Yeah, but I do agree, Andrew, with what you're saying. Where there's if we want things to improve, we're going to have to be a little combative and expect a little disagreement from our fans on.
And in a way, you have to Trojan horse them a bit. Like you have to package information that contradicts their worldview in a review that is what they think they want. Because otherwise they'll reject the premise. Sometimes, not all the time, but But I do feel like if I didn't approach reviewing that way, the premise would be rejected outright. Like if I just spoke about what I think is true about this stuff, about these products, without trying to meet them where they're at to a certain extent, it would be just Aria unveiled reviews all the way down, and even worse. Like even that video was twice as long as what it ended up being, and we talked about so many more different things, including the ear proximity stuff. And that was the second time that I filmed that video, because the first time was even worse. So
okay, so I feel like at some point an intervention may be required, or maybe some sort of medication.
Oh, that would have been required a long time ago.
I mean, look, I think for Andrew and I, something like that is genuinely in order. Not to beat us over the head with anything, but I do think, and I think we're both aware of this, that we just get too far into the weeds and kind of lose sight of the fact that something is interesting to us in this one particular way doesn't really affect most people's perception of it being a good or bad or different product. Like in the Aria Unveiled example, I think people came away from that video confused on what our judgment about the product actually was. When I say obviously you and Cameron's judgment of what the product actually was. And I think in that case, if I were interested in the exact same thing you are, which I am, and felt the same way about it in the treble, which I don't necessarily, I probably would have come out of it saying what you said, but I probably wouldn't have spent as much time talking about the thing, and would have spent more time talking, or just less time talking, period, honestly. I probably just would have made the review shorter.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to shout this out in the video and just in the chat. Johan K says, sounds like a 4-person echo chamber to me. If you're going to have this discussion, you should invite people who will actually push back on your opinions.
I don't know if this person is up to where we're at with the stream.
I suspect they're talking about the blind testing.
Yeah.
But I'd just like to say, we would love to have some of these people on.
So we're
I would
planning.
very much love to have some of these people.
Yeah,
on.
we're hoping to have Lachlan on.
You can
at
see
some
the
point.
bloodlust in Blaine's eyes.
Yeah, no, we're hoping to have Lachlan on to talk about this this stuff specifically. I will
Civilly.
say there are things that we don't agree on amongst ourselves, but there are a lot of things that we generally do. Like
Most of this
foundational
show
things.
is us arguing
Disagree,
about the
yeah.
minutia of what we don't
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
on.
Yeah, so like there's a shared understanding of the foundational stuff, but within that we're combative with one another.
You should just be truthful. You guys just lost a subscriber over that statement. Over what statement?
The untruthful one.
But clearly
I was not being untruthful at any point.
Yeah. Okay, so to get back to the question, right?
Yeah.
Which is, how much should viewers be trusted to understand that a reviewer's experience might differ from their own? This in part is down to the audience that you've cultivated, right? Like,
is this should a normative question or is this should a probabilistic question?
Oh, shut the fuck up.
I mean, I think
So
it kind of has to be both, right? Because that's how you would take it if you're actually creating content.
Yeah.
It's about likelihood, but it's about kind of the pool you're already
Well,
swimming.
it's about what you're trying to do. Ultimately,
Yeah.
Are you trying to, like, you can create a channel with and build a following of people who are just not at all interested in the science, right? And they just want to get, like, tell me about the soundstage. You can make it. You can call it, soundstage reviews. There's literally a thing called
That's taken.
soundstage. Yeah, it's taken, right? You can make it just about that, and that's all you focus on, right? And you would just tell people about soundstage, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you'll be able to build that up. So if you're trying to if you are genuinely trying to push this industry forward, I feel, and you're trying to basically be educational to whatever capacity you can, then you probably have a different set of expectations on well, you're cultivating a different audience, but you also have a different set of expectations for them. And then the second part of this is language limitations might result in differences of understanding. To me, this one is kind of huge. What are you laughing at?
You got something to say, Griffin?
Yeah. I just pretended to be you on the Headphones show account, saying that actually I don't like low mids as Andrew.
Yeah. So I'll note every time that I use the account or the shared account to say resolve.
I mean, we probably should do that.
We
Because
should do
all have
that.
access, yeah,
I do that when I'm responding to comments, right, in videos, as I say, put my name.
as you should.
Resolve here, yeah. Anyway,
I'm surprised how quickly that caught on in chat that one day.
Oh my god,
that was such a weird, like, never mind.
You haven't heard this. This has lower mids. Oh, you've seen some of the squigs, so
I have seen.
Although
people just like antagonizing Andrew because in his own strange way, he's kind of the straight man of the group. I mean, we all kind of
I am the
share
straightest.
that. You can't say that. Now we got to talk to HR.
It's funny.
But yeah, to get to the
you said there was a second part.
Yeah, the private language problem. And this question is from Michael, and I think it's so we've talked on the forum about this as well, and so he's aware of what we sort of like worry about with the private language problem on a regular basis with respect to some of the things like detail. Are you laughing at Dire Straight? Yeah, okay. With respect to things like, the subjective language that the subjective lexicon that we've built ourselves up to understand, right? And all that stuff. So the question is basically like, how much should the audience or the viewer be expected to have that recognition in their mind? And I mean, I suppose the difficulty with this question is on the word expectation, because we know that they don't think about this. And we
know that they don't think about it at all, or that they don't think about it like
if you explain to somebody the reason why the subjective language is problematic, right? If you cited the private language problem as a core reason for that, they would go, oh yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. But nobody comes at a video, expecting to learn about, okay, this is a 9 out of 10 on detail, thinking, oh, I'm gonna get, like they approach the videos with this sort of like default expectation that is itself at a baseline erroneous. So so the question there is like, what do we do when faced with that, right? And I think it's kind of related, right? Like to what we've been saying. It's like like to think that maybe I give them 60% of what they want and 30% of what challenges them, or something like that. I'm not saying I specifically calibrate like this, but like that's what the
Yeah,
outcome might be.
What's the other
Where
10%?
what? Oh,
You
that
said
just
60% of what they want and 30% of what challenges
no.
them.
It's just lies.
Oh,
Untrue.
okay.
John's never coming back.
We're
Yeah.
never getting John back.
No, it's gone forever. But yeah, you get what I mean, right? Where the outcome is still a little bit this Trojan horse of trying to push the industry in a positive direction, right? Where you hook them with or maybe bait and switch. I don't know. Maybe Mott and Bailey. What was the phrase that Blaine used? You get the idea, right? You hook them with the the initial crack is for free, and then you get no. Just kidding.
No, I mean, you have the engaging argument and then you have the real argument, which is extremely bad faith argumentation, but also very effective rhetoric.
Very effective. But in a way, it's like you have to. How else are you going to, if you're just going to go out guns blazing, being like, you are all wrong about your, the way you approach audio and your default assumptions are based on, wrong think.
Your default assumptions are so wrong that they're not based, they're cringed.
They're
But no, like getting anyone to listen to that, even if those are the people that would actually like their opinions challenged or would like to learn new things about audio, they're not going to see it.
Yeah. And in a way, it's like I know that the folks on HeadFi and the various different threads there are not particularly fond of our content, because the way we talk about things does challenge their worldviews. I don't necessarily blame them, but I also want to extend them an olive branch or some sort of like on-ramp should they be interested. And I feel like it's difficult to do that without presenting them the initial like, okay, I'm gonna speak your language, I'm gonna play this game for now, but now let's talk about the rest of it. I'm not saying we do this well. I'm not saying I regularly am good at this. I'm saying that's what the aspiration is from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, ideally the content has whatever I guess we would call educational, other people would call boring. But
well,
ideally it has that, but still has value, both because it is that, but because the idea itself is entertaining, or we can make the idea entertaining, less so than we like have to couch it in like putting the pill into a steak or something like that, Like,
I want to say like that's what I'm doing. Like I'm uniquely
no,
manipulating
I
the
don't think it
audience
is.
breathing.
That's why I'm trying to clarify here that like
Yeah.
I don't think we're necessarily focused on doing that, because that wouldn't make any of us happy and wouldn't make the content fun for any of us to do.
And that's what I'm saying is ultimately I just tell people, I just talk about what I want to talk about because that's interesting to me, right?
Yeah.
But there is a stylistic thing here that we're sort of questioning, and it's a reasonable thing to consider. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when it comes like just coming back right to the question and trying to answer it as directly as possible, unfortunately, I think you do have to be, if you want your reviews to minimize their minimize their downside in terms of, negative externalities felt by the viewers. So if they're buying something based on your opinion and, it doesn't go well, to minimize instances like that, but maximize value to the people who are reading your stuff, I think you do unfortunately need to assume very little in terms of what the viewer already understands or how critically they're thinking about the universality of an impression of a headphone.
So Oris says you can give the typical audiophile review for the first 10 minutes like the 2021 Resolve, do the outro, then 10 minutes of 2025 Resolve. So the problem there is that those are contradictory. right? Like I would
So
not have the way that I was doing. I don't think I would ever do that. I don't think I would ever go back and pretend, you know, like
So I do think there's something there. I do think we should probably front load like the part that I
the
think
people
the
want the audio
widest
file
the
stuff.
widest
Yeah.
amount of people would want to watch, which is 2021 Resolve. Um,
The normies
but
have
I
gone.
don't
We have 10% viewership audience retention. Now it's time for the nerd shit.
but
Nah.
I don't think that doing the outro and then just having like the nerd shit be a
No, but
separate thing
I
would
reject the
work.
premise entirely. I think I reject the premise that you would go that you would because part of like learning about this stuff is also like personal growth and personal like improving one's understanding about this stuff generally to the point where when you should look back at
For
your older.
some people.
Okay, but okay, tell me if I'm wrong here. You should look back at your older stuff and slightly cringe at the wrong take there or whatever. Like, say it's like a even if your perception of it isn't wrong, your judgment might be wrong about something, or the style,
I
the
would
way in
say
which you evaluate it might be wrong.
I would say many people do not share this take.
Okay, I don't.
I feel
They
that
probably
way,
don't.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
but I feel like yeah, like, otherwise like you're not growing and you're not or you're just not honestly looking back at it. Like if I look back at my reviews from 2021, I cringe because there's just no way that that's relevant to me now, or it's not even relevant. It's not even that it's not relevant. It's that it's just like I wouldn't have had that take back then. I wouldn't have approached it that way,
So the thing is,
or I
like,
shouldn't have
I
approached it
watch
that
your
way.
reviews. I still watch your old reviews, by the way. I feel like this has always been kind of a weird relationship for me because I have always just loved your content, and I still go back. Like, I was watching the 560S review the other day, which is
Oh
like
God,
a fair period ago. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I think there is an amount of, I don't know if this is the right tense for this
Blaine, you
word or
want
whatever,
personal
but
shrinkage?
no, there's an amount of encumbrance that you now have to deal with having a bit more of the knowledge that you do that is just absolutely not present in your old content. And like, I know you've always had the reputation of being the unfun one, but it's very clear that there is an element of fun that
There's a
is a lot harder for you
glowing
to get to now.
ember
Like, you
of
have to
fun.
talk, you have to mention at least you have to mention HPTF like 3 times before you get to full
Well,
resolve.
I've structured it. So what I've done is I basically swapped the order of data versus subjective. So I used to do data first, then talked about how
You
it sounded
did.
to me.
Yeah.
And I realized that this is becoming a problem because the data was just the only thing, like the measure talking not just like the graph, but like
Mhm.
talking about frequency response was the interesting thing stuff, or to me at least.
Mhm.
And I realized that's not what the people want, so I just flipped the order of that. So and I talk about how it sounds to me subjectively. I've
Mhm.
consciously tried to move away from the traditional lexicon though, and I
Mm.
feel that's where some of the antagonism comes, or some of the criticism comes
Yeah.
because people want to know how does this rank to this other thing that you also reviewed where you did use that language, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, and it's a reasonable thing to want.
It's
I'm not
tough.
saying it's
Yeah. And
perfectly
it's why,
reasonable.
it's why, for all of the faults I've found in his process, I feel like Krin's kind of unifying IEF metrics
Yeah,
did make his body of work very
totally.
coherent and easy for, even the person who doesn't know the disclaimers to kind of navigate and understand, at least for them to think they were able to navigate it and understand it.
Yeah,
You is calling out Andrew. Quote,
everyone
I
in
love
chat's
use
calling
take here
it.
actually, but
I feel like Resolve is fixating on I want to save all these lost sheep's mentality. Just go for full 2025 Resolve review style and let there be hate wall.
But meanwhile, we get this other comment from Reluctant Engineer. Y'all definitely have to make y'all definitely have to make reviews more digestible. I love Andrew's older reviews too. Old Andrew was arguably less knowledgeable, but the reviews seem more approachable.
I mean,
This is the
inarguably less
duality.
knowledgeable, unless you think that he has taken brain damage in the process.
Which
If
is
Old
entirely
Herzog was
possible.
more knowledgeable, it would be a bad sign.
I've been into audio for those 4 years, which is also likely brain damage.
Well,
That's
so
fair.
that's the
That's
thing.
fair.
He was having fun and a good time, but then he got closer with Blaine.
Yeah,
Ruins your life.
This is true. This is true. But like
I
Blaine
have fun in audio.
Blaine does have fun. It's
We know
usually
this.
involving knives and the suffering of others, but there is fun to be had.
But there is fun for Blaine in audio. This is true.
Yeah. But no, I like, to me there's two things going on here. One is sort of like the question of whether we, like, the way that I personally, and maybe even you as well, Griffin, approach reviews with respect to the olive branch to the community, and the other is the sort of more meta question of, like, more what the actual question is here about the, like, what's the expectation of the audience at large, right? And what is the
It's something you and I
responsibility of a
definitely
reviewer?
wrestle with a ton.
Yeah, we do. When it comes to the like the deeper shit that most people, like 99% of people, don't know about, and is a struggle. I mean, I'd like to think that it's changing. I'd like to think that things are improving,
I think
right?
it is. Yeah.
To the point where, one day I would love to take you up on this. You up on exactly what they're saying here.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
that's exactly what I want to do. But and one day I'd like to think that we're pushing in that direction, right?
We are. And like to be clear, we are in many ways taking our audience with us on that journey. So it would be disingenuous for us to just be 2021 Resolve, because our audience knows more than 2021 Resolve now too.
Well, I straight up can't do it. Like, I would not.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it would be both unrealistic and unfair for anyone to ask.
That would be the untruthful Resolve.
It would absolutely be the untruthful Resolve.
I think that there's a merit to the idea of leading with the thin end of the wedge, however.
Yeah,
100%. And I also don't think, like, this is where I say, like, we certainly have not figured it out. We're certainly going to continue to wrestle with this. And I do think that there is a middle ground where you can provide the educational shit without needing to go into that territory to bring people on board, right? Like, I think the thin end of the wedge doesn't require necessarily the traditional lexicon, and nor does it require providing people with the hyper nerdy caveats that capture our interest, at the moment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think there's an extent to which, though, if we weren't doing it, no one would be. Because, like, so there was actually a post on Krin's subreddit the other day. Let me see if I could find it, because I would like to not misrepresent the wording here. It was essentially asking, the title is "Stuff Krin Doesn't Like to Talk About." And the content is, there are some Krin videos where he gets a bit technical, but he always seems to avoid going too deep into it with the usual, "This is stuff that you guys don't need to know," / "I'm not going too deep into the theory." Well, are there any YouTube channels that go deep into the theory? Any sites, books where I can read about it? And basically the only replies in the thread were us.
Yeah.
You can also subscribe to my Patreon.
You don't have a Patreon. Stop lying.
Blaine, you should have a cameo where you just insult people.
I don't really insult people that much, to be honest, and it's mostly my friends that I do.
Yeah,
that's true. It's true.
Yeah, but what I was saying is that we have only gotten, like, obviously our reviews and takes and all that stuff is, like, probably of value to people, but I think a lot of the value we provide to our particular audience is that. So we definitely don't want to stop doing that and caveating things where necessary, and considering the fact that our viewers, may not know, like, new viewers may not know the extent to which they should be doubtful of us.
So, and this is one of the things that we are talking about from a grand content strategy perspective, is how to deal with this. And we're going to be experimenting in the upcoming little bit with some sort of demarcation for what the type of content is and maybe who it's for, just to see if we can make this a little bit easier for people, so that, for people who do want a really deep technical style of style of content that does go into things like, the HPTF variation stuff or whatever, it's clear to them what that is, and also having the stuff that is a lot more accessible to brand new people who they're not familiar with any of this, and they just want to have a very basic kind of sense of like, okay, what matters to me here.
I still kind of feel like, I know that people have been negative on my "we should have a Patreon" take, but this
We should
is the kind of shit you put on Patreon, is the shit that only the people who are super nerds who have
I
watched
kind
all
of
your
disagree.
videos care about.
I kind of disagree, because I'm not opposed to actually doing a Patreon. I actually think that's fine, and I think what
Yeah.
you're saying here is fine too. I'm just saying I don't like the idea of like withholding certain types of educational things behind some sort of paywall. Like, I don't like the idea of like,
Why?
in order for it to be, why? Because
Yeah.
I think it should be public information. I think it should just
Yeah,
be
no,
stuff
like
that's
I
out
just
there.
don't think it should be paywalled.
Yeah. But
I mean,
people
we
spending
are
money on this
working for this.
Okay, but ability, and this actually has to do with the moral limits of markets. We're gonna get into philosophy here, but basically, this is distributive justice. Ability and willingness to pay should not be, in this instance, the like, we're not an institution that you pay to get educated on, where you get a degree out of it in fucking audio. Like, we don't do that. So, and in the spirit of that, ability and willingness to pay should not be the determining factor in whether or not somebody can have access to the information that they might want, that we're able to provide them. And with that said, it's not like any of this is more challenging to do. It's not like it's hard. It's a deeper burden on us. It's actually easier to do, because this is the stuff that actually is interesting to us in the first place. So
I'll point out, you don't actually have to paywall stuff on Patreon.
yeah, you just want to.
Admittedly, it would be out of keeping with our current thing, but I mean, you know what I mean. Like, we
Yeah.
could easily have a members only section or
So
whatever on
right
our
now,
website.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not opposed to that style of thing if there's no paywall for it. I think right now we want to experiment a little bit with this on the YouTube platform, because there's a much larger audience there, and I don't know if this is going to be like a tiered thing or whatever. Like, I don't know how we're going to do the demarcation of the nerd shit versus the accessible shit, or like the thin end of the wedge versus the thicker end of the wedge. But some sense of intentionality towards the content that we're creating with respect to this is something that we are rolling out starting as early as next week. So I hope that this can solve some of these concerns about, like, a piece of content not resonating with a given audience, because it's either too much for them or it's not enough for them, right? In terms of the nerd shit, right? So that's
It's hard to find that balance, man.
It is hard to find that balance, and so the thought here is, well, maybe we don't have to find that balance. I mean, I think we always have to find it to some extent, but
The thought here is, maybe we can eat our cake and have it too.
yeah, maybe we can have maybe we can first have our cake and then we can eat it.
Cut the conclusion part of the reviews off and put that behind a paywall.
That would be evil.
I love this idea.
Of course you do.
Harchu says, I think the connection between accuracy and scope is something to consider here. Yeah, that's not an unreasonable way of
most
framing
scopes
it.
aren't very accurate. They're like 10, 12-bit max.
Yeah. Blaine is so ready to hunt me for sport running around in the forest. It's really weird.
Wait, when did that come up again, or did you just bring that up?
No, I just brought that up.
Oh, I see.
No, but scope is really the thing here, right? It's like does everybody need to know everything about? Like, I was just thinking something as simple as, like, okay, do people need to know about driver FS for a front sealed planar, open back planar? It's like, well, that's highly relevant information if you wear glasses. So
I
I kind of
think-
I don't know how to answer that.
Well, no, I think that the answer is we need to be conveying this stuff in ways that does not require, oh, hell yes, Griffin finally put up the fucking.
Wait,
put up
but
the poll.
this doesn't make sense. Krin style disclaimers.
Yeah, we
where
have
it's, where it's
video.
just one video that is just out of the
No,
out of
but
the
we do
content.
that. We have done
No,
that.
but he doesn't. This is saying, should we go back to doing only that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that there are more votes for more disclaimers than there are for RU style disclaimers.
People just did not like that video. I knew that they wouldn't like the video. I said it in the video.
More disclaimers is getting dangerously ahead.
There we go. More disclaimers.
Okay, wait, no. I think this poll is destroyed by meme.
Yeah,
More
I think we
disclaimers.
may
These are the
have
videos
to
that's
make
just
this
disclaimers.
without more disclaimers.
This is an invalid test. How dare you?
Oh my god.
That's really funny though.
No, but in serious, Heartyou's point here is quite reasonable. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
being
no.
90% accurate on 5% of a topic or 30% accurate on 80% of a topic is different value.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I also think that for shit like it doesn't matter if you wear glasses, we shouldn't be explaining FS. We should just have a
We should
plot
say,
that
yeah,
says this
yeah.
headphone doesn't vary when you wear glasses, and that takes like 10
They don't need to
seconds
know
say.
why. They just
Yeah.
need to know that it does. Yeah.
And
I
they
think
can pay
that's
for the
the
Patreon if they want to know why.
So the problem is people do want to know why, or even if they don't know that they want
The
to know why,
disclaimer
they would be interested once they learn why, or would be happy once they were exposed to new information like that. But it's about
It's true.
making sure you're not weighing down the content of the video
well,
by
but
doing
also
that.
where you draw the line, right? Where you put the demarcation for
Cameron has our April Fool's video. I'm sorry.
yeah.
First 14 minutes are
God.
entirely disclaimers, and the final 30 seconds is a plug for BetterHelp sponsorship.
This is so good. Okay. Remind us. We'll do this.
It's so stupid. Oh fuck. Okay. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out the headphones is a complicated thing.
Yeah, who would have fucking thought, right?
Yeah.
So Pibby Boy in chat says you can briefly explain how and why it makes a difference. Just don't spend more than 1 or 2 sentences on it. The problem is that Andrew has so many things that he wants to explain that for that even if they were constrained to 1 or 2 sentences, it can still get pretty
Listen.
long depending on the video.
Listen, I have many sentences. And this is the you guys see a 15-minute video, but what gets filmed is like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So you guys see the watered down, disclaimer free version, and it has many disclaimers.
Maybe we should get that BetterHelp sponsorship sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah. But it's funny because I talk to other creators in other areas and they tell me that it's the same thing. Like I feel like I was talking to Bad C Tech about this, and he was telling me, yeah, it's exactly right. It's exactly like that. Because you're trying to make a piece of content that is entertaining as well, right? Like we're not. This was a while ago. People asked, like, do you consider yourselves audio journalists? And like, I get what the spirit in which they're asking that question, but it's like we're like media. So in the sense, yeah, sure, but we're entertainers. Like it would be naive of us to say that we're not influencers because we absolutely have influence. We are.
I consider myself an audio propagandist.
You would.
Jesus Christ. You don't actually publish any propaganda, though.
No, the most effective propaganda is the ones that you get other people to put forward, though.
Okay.
I'm the
fair.
gray eminence behind everyone.
No, I liked your original take before where you're the audio Svengali.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing. Svengali is an archetype of the Eminos Greece.
Okay. I was originally going to say the audiophile Iago.
I'm gonna end the
Griffin
poll.
doesn't like it.
Unfortunately, this is not as clear cut as I thought it was going to be. I mean, if we
Well-
just count all of the more disclaimers votes as meme, then it is a little bit.
Yeah,
But we
it's
can't.
pretty clear cut. All right, let's redo the poll without more disclaimers since you
all right.
guys can't behave.
Oh wait, this is what? Oh, okay. It's just done it twice for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird.
I also think that none of this is useful because this audience is extremely tainted. And that's partially
another
why.
good point. Maybe I shouldn't make another poll.
No,
You should, because the thing is, if even the tainted audience says fewer disclaimers, that means we really need it.
Oh, actually, that's not a bad point.
That was, by the way, the lowest other than the REAU disclaimers.
No, Krin style disclaimers is also much less disclaimer.
Oh, I see. So it's the problem is the confusion of the two, because they're still disclaimers, even if it's less.
Yeah. So the question is,
do we do it in a standalone video? Stop doing this. Stop doing Krin style disclaimer. That's not the right framing. It should be no disclaimers, some disclaimers, many disclaimers. Or
he's censoring the voting process.
Well, yeah, because people don't know what that means, or they interpret it differently. The well is poisoned.
I will say that even among the 4 votes that were for the poll that was only up 10, REAU disclaimer still got 0 votes.
And I was the only one who voted for Krin style disclaimer. The other ones just voted no. Okay, we'll make the poll with disclaimers in a separate video.
I'm not making another poll.
Disclaimers.
But by the way, none of this is actually going to be like.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is a binding result.
No, none of this actually turns into anything.
We've done a blood contract.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anything else to say about this topic? Do you think?
I mean, I do think that there is sort of an interesting question underneath this that didn't get chewed on too much about how much people are responsible for doing their own due diligence. Like, that's something that we tend to walk over on the objective fact that most people don't do much due diligence.
Yeah, but I think we just have the evidence.
Well, what's an example? What's an example of that?
What do you mean?
Well, like when people like doing their own due diligence, how far does that go?
Well, so this is what I'm leading around to. So there's this thing in economics in info economics about the question of information search costs. So that is to say, how much effort, time, money it takes people to find out information that ideally they would have to make perfect decisions. And I think that one of the things we can observe from the fact that most people aren't going all the way into the deep end is that they don't place an absolute value on having all of the most accurate information. They're fine with an approximation of the truth because all they need is something that's approximately true, because that's good enough to get them as accurate as they need to be to get something that's decent, which is all they usually want.
Yeah. I have 2 views on them. I'm of mixed opinion on this. Contrary opinion on this, because on the one hand, I tend to agree that is the most practical. Like, people want the thing that is the most useful to them, which really is not necessarily the rest of it. It is the surface level stuff typically. However, from the way that I personally approach all of this stuff, I still wouldn't want to make the videos that exclude that just because it is more practical for people, if that makes sense. Like it's not so much about serving them all of the information and it's up to them to understand it. It's about providing them some sort of grounding that the surface level stuff that they have to make, that they're using to make decisions, is well founded. That, like, they don't need to understand, the reasons why. They just need to understand that there is a reason why.
This is a very strong argument against any disclaimers or even anything we do.
Okay,
Horace says, spend thousands of hours learning acoustic science, buys AirPods Pro 2. Spends 0 time doing research, buys AirPods Pro 2. Incredible.
It's right. That we are destroyed by that. It's extremely accurate.
This is what's the curve, the bell,
it's the bell curve meme.
I mean, look, the problem is that Apple is more competent than every other company doing audiophile headphones, right? So like they make good enough products so that you don't
are
have
they
to
though?
do it. I mean, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't find the AirPod Max very impressive.
Okay.
Also,
All right, look,
by the way,
They're better than
agree.
any company doing in-ear headphones. I will
It's
agree.
stinky. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
even that,
Draw the line
they've
there.
done.
That's easy.
No. I'm sorry. Even that, they have one good product. Where is it?
Yeah, because they don't. Okay. Unlike
How many
most
good products do
companies
you
with
need?
no good products,
Are we putting
they
the
don't
blame
drown you
of
in
the?
no good products. They just have a good product and then a less good product.
Are we putting the blame for the Power Beats Pro 2 onto Apple?
Beats
or
is a
no?
different company. Beats, like
Okay.
I know it's owned by Apple, but all of their
Because there's a lot of
acoustics are handled
similarities.
completely separately with a different team and a different approach.
All right.
I have talked to a Beats employee who had access to their 5128 who showed me
Yeah,
kind of their
because that thing fucking
their
sucks.
yeah. I mean, for one, they have a completely different tuning target for it.
Yeah,
So
it's bad.
Yeah, it's a bad tuning target.
It is not based on the same acoustic research that Apple did.
The funny thing is, people are like, "Oh yeah, but you
It's
don't
not
like
based
bass
at
because
all.
you don't like bass because you don't like fun, so you won't like the V-shaped tuning." That's not the problem. The
No,
bass is the best part about it.
You
Yeah.
don't like fun, to be fair.
Oh yeah, but those things can be true, and the product can still be shit for the reasons that I described. The bass is
Yes.
the best part about the Power Beats Pro 2. You can quote me on that.
Yeah.
The rest of
I
it is
actually
what
saw another take in
goes straight
chat
to
I
hell.
can speak to really quick. Pandemonium says Krin's refusal to get into the weeds is one of the main reasons that audiophiles don't understand audio. So the thing is, Krin basically started an entire trend of hobbyist measurements that, led to a lot of misunderstanding, but absolutely improved the state of knowledge for the audiophile
It is
hobby
also 100% true to say that the hill that is tilted against us is in large part a function of the noises that Krin has made, right? Like that is because of its popularity and ubiquity, right? That sort of a way of understanding. It's the reason why we review the way that we do, the way that most reviewers review the way that they do, which cultivates that style of understanding about this kind of stuff.
I think you over attribute influence to Krin.
Sorry?
I think that Resolve.
Well, you're saying it goes much beyond that, like much further back. And Krin was a symptom of the disease, not necessarily the.
Yes, that is exactly.
But it was. But
love you, Brian.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that the popularity in popularizing it, he was a vector of contagion for the disease in ways that others were not necessarily, right? Because it took that older concept and spread it more to the masses.
I have a proposal for Resolve's tagline. Good is the enemy of the perfect.
Yes. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like
for the record, I don't.
But no, like in that respect, I understand where you're going, where you would both probably go with this, which is to extol the virtues of the massive benefit that his popularity has provided the community. And in that respect, I completely agree.
Not just to the community, but like to the point of the AirPods Pro 2, like
to the products as well. Like it's and I completely agree.
Now measure using IEC 711 couplers when they were not before.
I'm right there with you. I'm trying to think of what the spreading of the disease metaphor is for this, because there is a
look, I just see us
positive benefit
complicit in spreading the disease, just because we've all been kind of
absolutely.
As time goes on. It's just we haven't been as popular as Krin, so
and haven't yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like, it's like spreading false happiness.
Is there such a thing as false happiness?
Foremost problem with the world is unjust happiness.
Yeah, unmitigated joy. You must be angry. Yeah. Capper says the disease is the obsession with graphs. I don't know.
If you understood the graphs, you might be more obsessed with them.
Yes. Good take, unfortunately.
the review
Or let's
situation.
discuss them.
Let's get into spicy hour here, guys. We'll cut it a little bit shorter.
We're not gonna talk about Can Jam or
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's talk about Can Jam for a bit, and we'll then do spicy
yeah.
half
I mean,
hour.
there's not much we can talk about with Can Jam because like we don't really know that much about what's coming. Like the only thing that is going to be at Can Jam that I think people probably know about is this. Well, actually, I don't know if Sennheiser is going to have this at Can Jam.
But
Actually,
you
never
have it, so you're going to talk
I
about
have it. Yeah. I mean, I will also have it at Can Jam. So if anyone
Mm.
wants to come to the headphones.com booth and try my personal unit, I will
For
have it
folks
on,
who
but I'm not going to have
are-
it on the desk. So you're going to have to ask me.
folks
for
who
it.
are unaware, that's the Sennheiser 505, the new
Yes.
Sennheiser.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, you might like it.
I'm not sure. Also, Andrew, did you see Yermo's measurements of this?
I did. It looks brighter.
It looks so much brighter and leaner in the mids.
Yeah.
My unit is not like that at all.
His is on a 4128. Yours is on a 065 clone, right?
Yeah.
This could be a clamp force thing, maybe.
Or pin interactions.
Could be.
But we're talking
Yeah.
about like lower frequencies.
Yeah, no, the difference under 2K is
It's
very
substantial.
strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it's to the point where I would actually think that in that band this would be a little not brighter looking, but it wouldn't look nearly as different as it does. So
Mhm.
I am wondering if there's something going on there. But this unit, I mean, it sounds like it measures on my rig. I haven't posted the measurements publicly yet, chat. So sorry, but it.
Chat asks if there's a bump on the inner baffle that hits your ear.
So there is a bump on the inner baffle.
I see it.
Yep.
Yeah,
I see the bump.
Yeah, it for some reason on this one doesn't seem to hit my ear. I don't know if I'm wearing this one differently than other ones. This one does have like maybe a little bit less clamp force than the other 5 series headphones, but not much. But yeah, I will have this at Can Jam if you guys want to hear it. I will also have an impressions video coming out on this. That is filmed. I'm doing a pre-edit, and then I might just pass it off to another editor to like make it pretty, so it can just get out quickly. Because as if you've been following the channel, you might know I just take too fucking long for this stuff. But Can Jam. So, is there anything else we know about that we're excited to hear?
I'm gonna bring this.
Oh, is that the unit?
The Power Beats Pro 2.
Are they letting you hold on to it?
No, I'm joking. I gotta send this back to them.
Okay.
Are we allowed to talk about some of the things that I know will be coming? I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
You're probably not. Like,
Yeah.
the only thing I
No,
know
I
is
mean,
going to
like-
be there that's new is the Abyss.
The Joel.
Yeah. And I'm probably
I
just going to
cannot
flat
say
out
I
skip.
have any interest in that.
Yeah, no.
Oh, DMS liked it. He said it was good.
I
Okay,
don't
DMS
care.
also liked the Empyrean too.
He also liked the Diana.
Blaine liked the Empyrean too. I like the Empyrean too.
I like the Imperial.
Yes, that is a mark against it in my case.
Wait, you bought 16 pairs of HD 419s for $50? Why?
Good question. Oh, Krin's new thing. Yeah, Krin's new stuff is going to be there, and that's
Now, what are your thoughts on what he's going for with that? Do you think it's going to be for his new target?
with the marketing, or I mean, we already know what they measure like. He's already posted a
Oh, I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
They're all roughly to his new target. So like the massive base shelf.
Gotcha.
What is coming from
Yeah.
Krin is his new brand Krinier. He has 3 things I think he's displaying. Project Meta, Project Daybreak, and then Project Reference. Project Reference is the only one I'm interested in like owning. The treble looks a little rough, but we'll see.
IEMs are of no interest to me.
Pandemonium, this is Sennheiser Consumer. This is
It's Yermo. It's a Yermo
Sennheiser.
boy.
HD 490 Sennheiser.
Well, not Yermo anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yermo.
Yermo did obviously work on it a lot, but
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing people, right? Like to me, that's the best part of
Yeah.
Can Jam. Getting to
Yeah.
see people, hang out with folks you never really get to see otherwise. Gonna get to see you guys in person. I feel like for most
okay.
people, unless it's like your first can jam, the people are the reason you come, pretty much. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
I'm trying to think if there's something
the reason I'm so excited for this one is really just that we're going to have the 5128, and I have had no time alone with one.
What are you going to do with it?
Okay, so whenever I've been at a show and been able to measure stuff, I can't do multiple seatings or anything like that. One, because I'm limited for time. I mean, I'm working.
Sure.
But two, because Vince's software isn't really like Rue, where it's like
Right.
conducive to that. So the fact that I will be able to use it with a software I'm familiar with is on its own a very big help. But I'll also be able to do, or at least try to do, things that no one else is doing.
I just picture you
like-
taking it out to a nice dinner.
No,
Get some alone time.
No, I'm gonna bring some sort of putty, probably like a keyboard
Wow.
cleaning gel or something
Kinky.
like that, to like.
Going right to the putty.
Why are you like this?
and the
No,
gel.
I wanna see examples of what happens when you measure an IEM and nullify the rocking mode. I want to see what happens
Baby oil.
if you use different size ear tips and try to actually quantify insert depth differences. Yeah, most of the stuff I would want to test it with is IEMs, because it's, frankly, I don't love it for headphones in terms of the results I get, but that's just a me thing. It just doesn't correlate to me very well.
R0 in the chat says Grell's novel target presentation seems cool. I have great reservations about where that's going to go.
We already know what sound is preferred with open headphones.
But maybe we don't.
Approximately.
Approximately, yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, I don't see. I would be very shocked if it was a large deviation from what Harman looks like.
What I guess I have a bit of a problem with the framing of it, only insofar as it retains the idea of the before times of singular target is thing to shoot for.
Yeah.
Right. And I obviously don't know what he's going to talk about, right? So maybe that's just the Trojan horse, or the
Wait,
to
are
get
you on
people in the
Headphone
door.
right now?
No.
Oh, okay.
Did you think this was Headphone because of the illumination of my face?
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
No, I was
No,
looking
it's
at
really
Quant
bright.
Asylum.
Oh. Hell yeah.
What else? What are we excited for Can Jam? Hope get to talk to
I
Jude.
definitely want to hear the
Jude's
new
one?
Audio Technica stuff, just so I can be informed when I don't like it.
I actually have a fair few things I want to hear if they're there. I'd love to hear a 490. I'd love to hear the 505. Love to try the new Audio Technicas.
I forgot you've not heard the 490 yet, but yeah, Andrew, can you actually bring that to the show?
me.
Unlikely.
You can't bring it to
I
the
probably
show?
just won't have space. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I have to bring some other things that I can't talk about.
Got it.
That will be at the show. So
yeah, definitely not whatever's on your head right now.
It won't be this.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing this.
Yeah.
I'm bringing this headphone, but it won't be this.
Right.
Listen,
so,
I didn't make it for you. I made it for me.
Loris, that's rude.
I'm doing the Zeos thing.
No.
Oh God.
Nerd. That is not accurate either. Like,
No.
they don't have any similarities. It's not just that Andrew.
Well,
is
they
a
are
nerd.
both criminals in the EU.
I'm not allowed into the States. That's the problem.
Michael James with a good question as always. Putting aside the obvious problems, is Grell's front field idea necessarily inconsistent with Harman? Could you have the right relationship between bass and treble in the wrong field?
Okay, so
Didn't they try to do that with the Grell phone? That's exactly what that is.
So the frontal orientation thing is mostly something that's debunked by one, subjective comparison tests that have included both the free field and diffuse field target, and two, theoretically, the work of Gunter Thiel. It's true that you could combine Harman stuff with a frontal target, but when there was no shelves, when there was no slant applied, people hated the frontal target. So the data doesn't seem likely to me that people will like it once you slap, preference filters on it. It's conceivable though. Like there's a chance. It would surprise me a lot though.
And it also is about where you're measuring that frontal target. Like if you're taking a frontal target as measured on a rig and then transposing that to another person's head, that wide dip in the 7 to 9K area just might not be there on the person's head.
Need anti-grail headphone. Isn't that what Zeos tried to do?
Well, he made that headphone and then said to wear it backwards.
Yeah.
No. The baffles were installed in the incorrect orientation. So wearing it functionally didn't make any difference. Like with But I thought that was kind of funny, right? Like they deliberately made this wonderful angled baffle here, but then installed it backwards.
Anything else relevant to CanJam?
Oh, please shower and wear deodorant if you attend.
They won't.
And when I say shower, I mean every day of it.
Did you guys hear Rob's song about CanJam?
I did.
So good. Dr. Olive's in there. Zeos is in there. I'm gonna send it to Dr. Olive.
Okay. All right. That's it for CanJam.
Yeah.
Let's move on to spicy.
Spicy. Let's go. Peppers.
Okay. Spicy people. Let's go.
Do you guys have any spicy takes?
The best CanJam is your first CanJam.
That wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
Nor mine.
Sorry. The best CanJam for audio is your first CanJam.
Yeah, I mean,
also wasn't mine.
Most new stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
The best one was the one when Chrono was there in New York.
New York 2022?
23? Caleb was there too.
2023.
Orange shirts.
Yeah.
That one for me was the best because it just happened to be that there was more stuff that was released that I was interested in. I got a chance to actually try more stuff.
Was that the first one after COVID, or was that the second one after COVID?
I'm not sure, but it was the New York one that I went to.
That was the first time Grell had his thing.
The first one after COVID was SoCal.
Got it. So SoCal 2022 though.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and then New York is early in 2023. So.
Yeah.
Stephen McTally, CanJam is overrated.
If you are the kind of person who hasn't had the opportunity to hear many headphones, I would say it's not overrated, and that is
I would say it's underrated, like drastically underrated,
yeah,
actually.
But if you have heard a lot of headphones, you probably want to have other reasons why you go. Community, friends.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what my favorite CanJam was. It's probably either 2024 SoCal or Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas was really chill. That was nice.
Yeah, I really liked Dallas.
Wait, your first was 2024 SoCal?
No, my first
was your favorite. Okay.
SoCal, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But 2024 SoCal was a lot more chill. And 2024 Dallas was so chill we're not doing it again, probably. But it was nice.
That must be nice, right? Because it's not as hectic, and you actually get a chance to like hang out a bit more.
Yeah, and we lose $50,000.
And Eminent One says Dallas is
lost
overrated.
leaders.
I think it's overrated from a if you're a consumer who's going to be going there to hear stuff thing. But if
you have your headphones, you can get them measured by one Griffin.
Well, that's not a Dallas thing only anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
Dallas is underrated because Phil's there.
Yeah. Will it still be safe to come to USA? Good question. Who knows
Yes.
these days? Man? Who knows? Oh, safe for me. I mean, I don't know. Well, I have no idea. I might get arrested and turned around.
Nightrise says companies should launch open backs at Dallas so you can actually hear them. Oof.
You get very few people listening to them in comparison, but
Michael
English school-
asking, when will we get Blaine reviews? It's a good question. Ooh, wait, Awab, is that true? When did he say that? The take is DMS says the Susvara is not more detailed than K361. Terrifyingly base take.
he doesn't like this as far. So I think it's just a bad take. But
Probably because it's not very good.
well, you would say that because you hate trouble.
I don't like its mids either.
This as far as mids. See, I don't like the K361's treble. I think the K361's treble.
Yeah,
is
no, I don't
worse.
like it either. I mean, the reason I'm agreeing with this take is because I wouldn't say either of them is inherently more detailed.
What is detail? Baby, don't hurt me. Okay, let's see. Companies should launch open. Oh wait, we did that one. English school teachers who are YouTube audiophile reviewer talking about FRM driver materials and explaining technology and difference between branded and OEM drivers is funny. Who is this? Who is the English?
This
school
is,
teacher?
I mean, I can only think of two people who I believe have taught English who are YouTube reviewers. One is Kuro
Or do they
Wong,
mean
but
English
I believe
school
this refers
teachers?
to Hawaii Bad Boy.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it. Yeah, I don't know.
Because
Sure.
I'm not certain that Kuro Wong ever taught English in, I believe, Japan, but I am almost certain that's what Hawaii Bad Boy did.
Okay, because this is there also isn't anything spicy here. It just says that it's funny. I don't know what that. There's nothing there.
Well, no, he's just making fun of that of a YouTuber for
okay.
being bad.
All right. Will Trump cause shakeup in U.S. audiophile products with tariffs? Maybe you should stick around for tomorrow's video. We might talk about that.
My hot take is probably not that much.
Yeah. We should probably not discuss this too much, though. Both because it's going to be in the video tomorrow, and also because it's.
Who wants to talk trade policy?
No.
Yeah. What happened to our boy Chrono anyway? He went on to do school, more school.
Yeah. My understanding was that he went back to school.
Yeah. Love that guy. Let's see. This is the echo chamber that was mentioned earlier. What is the echo chamber that was mentioned earlier?
When we were disagreeing about the Susvara, I think they're joking.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like we could take the HD 800, we could take HD 6XX versus 600. Like, we disagree about all this shit.
Hardgy went to an Opeth gig. Sound was shit. Unsurprised.
Yeah.
Live sound?
Even on their albums, sound is shit. So the last 4 albums have been the sound has been shit on the last. Yeah, not since the Bogren era.
Okay, wait. I have a spicy take. And neither of you are going to like it. And to an extent, I don't really like it.
You don't like your own take?
I don't, but it's...
Right.
I just like many of my takes, but I have them
just
anyway.
discharging this burden onto
ready
us.
for the take?
Okay.
Ready for the take? We need to come up with a headphones.com target curve.
Yeah, this is.
I think that's a reasonable take.
Well, it's also, but there's somebody's going to have framed that quote from you, Blaine, saying, "We will never have a target curve."
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the last year or two is that if you come up with something that has like remotely enough purchase by a few people, you can get Sean to do the hard work and validate it for you. But no,
only with IEMs though, which I don't care about.
Yeah, no, but in seriousness, I do think it's not just about us wanting to kind of capture the idea of this is the thing that's going to be most preferred. like across the board on average.
Well, it's to
the
get it
highest
tested. It's to
movement.
get certain ideas tested.
It's not even to get certain ideas tested. It's to have a vision of what would actually be the best way to listen to music. Like, so I think the reason I say this is because with Krin's target that he just introduced, there is obviously baked into it the idea that this is just Krin's preference. Prior to
That's how
that,
he's framed it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the IEF preference target. It is no longer the IEF neutral target. That is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there would be a benefit both to our internal messaging as well as to the community if we did plant more of a flag in terms of what we think an audiophile would like and had some semblance of, if not testing immediately, something we all agreed was, if not preferentially neutral, likely or unlikely to be perceived as colored. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
So I'm actually on board with this idea from the practical benefits side of things, as in this is the way that the community has come to think about graphs, is like baked into that is the concept of a target curve. And by us not supplying our version of that to them, it's just confusing.
So
So
the reason
I
why I said our internal messaging is because we now have a paradigm where we are using a bounded field.
Oh, sorry. Did you say to have a target curve internally for these reasons? For us to
I mean, we would. I mean, I think we should have one internally, but I think there is a disconnect that I think we don't really give enough credit to, which is that we provide a bounded field, but the bounded field implies a center point. And we've talked about this plenty.
I've been saying this forever.
We've talked about this plenty before.
Yeah.
But we don't really have a center point.
Yeah. And that's a problem. And I've wanted to fix this problem forever.
But even if we redefine a set of bounds by revisiting
and we will need to update the preference
which
bounds,
we're in the process of doing. If we don't define a center point, people will just use the center point, and it's not necessarily likely that the center point is the best point.
I'm not sure that. So ironically, I started out more in favor of this take than I've grown as you have qualified it. Like,
okay, well, what was the part you agreed with, I guess?
I think that, and this is presuming that we did actually do, a little listening test of it, obviously, but presuming that we did do that, it would be interesting to produce a target curve that is probably going to be well liked, but doesn't look like the other existing target curves. Just because we have decent data that indicates that such a thing is possible, and doing that might help to break people out of the mold a bit. But I'm not really confident on getting a better approximation of the middle point. I'm not confident on that one at all.
I'm not saying we want an approximation of the middle point. I'm saying, if anything, the middle point isn't likely to be
but like for something in that area, I'm not super confident in our ability to find something that's going to be statistically better than any other arbitrary line in that space.
When you say in that, when you say in that space, you mean like in that physical field, not in our audiophile space, right?
Yes, okay. No, not that. God, no.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. So my thinking of this was not something that looks dramatically different than the other target curves that exist. But the problem is that most of these target curves prescribe, a bass and treble level and are based on an HRTF. I think all of us internally would agree that if we're including consumers kind of in the just like non-audiophiles kind of in the overall sampling of listener preference, that Harman is probably the best we're going to get, like or close to in terms of like the bass and treble levels, like representative of what
Improving on
Harman
Harman
actually
would be quite
wants.
difficult.
What's up? Yeah, right.
Improving on Harman would be hard. Yeah.
Right. I would be surprised if it couldn't be improved on for what audiophiles expect, though.
Elaborate on that.
I think, and this is partially what I meant by we have to have a little bit of a vision or a kind of a mission. I think a curve with less bass would be, if not preferred, better for the things people tend to care about a lot in headphones.
You just
their
don't like fun.
details. I don't know. I don't know if I like fun.
I
If
would-
if
I
10
would be
decibels of
interested
bass
in-
boost is fun, then I
Let
don't like
me see if I'm Joe. I'm being a dick. Let me just see if I understand this. Though you're proposing the need for a target curve specifically for a what we think the audiophiles might like, right? Because that doesn't technically exist from what we have from Harman, which is a more large, like a more broader kind of like bass and treble.
the
thing.
closest we have is whatever trained listeners segmented out
I get what you're saying.
or tools trained listener curve or whatever.
Yeah.
But
The
I
the
think
audiophile target that is not necessarily applied to the masses as much.
I think there is a hole in the marketplace of ideas for such a thing to actually have quite a bit of purchase. Because for a long time, and to be clear, this would mostly have purchase probably in the in-ear sphere where there is kind of still uncertainty. But I think there was a long time where Krin's target did have purchase because it didn't prescribe some sort of huge base shelf. Now, most of the products he made had those, or just had base shelves, and part of the expectation was that you didn't think of it as this line is prescribing a base level, but that the absence of a base shelf meant you should add your own. But I think the audiophile space is kind of missing a force of, if not actually being correct about it, which would need to be found out via testing, this is actually what we think people would prefer. And here's why.
I don't know. I have several thoughts on this, but none of them are well formed. Because, like, on the one hand, you have I think there is a spirit in which, like, you're right that there is a gap for this kind of thing, but I struggle with how to actually validate something like that.
Well, you would need to do listening tests.
I know,
Like
but I'm just saying I feel that listening tests would
The-
like you're basing an assumption here on what we have from Harman or the existing listening tests that we have.
What assumption?
That there's a need for this to exist. Or I'm asking, are you basing the assumption that there's a need for this to exist on what we already have? I guess, yeah.
I would say there are enough unanswered questions from Harman's work that even a small listening test with few subjects but done with a different methodology could provide insight. I brought this up in chat
I would
on
agree.
the last stream, but there are just enough things that could be tested, that like doing the same tests Harman did but in different ways, that could lead to different results that are still useful and could tell us more about the nature of preference
So,
for
Am I wrong? But
the people
isn't
we'd
this
be testing,
something?
which is likely us.
Yeah, isn't this something that Constantine tried to do at one point? or not the testing
No,
part.
the optimum hi-fi
That's
thing
yeah,
is just the combination of the
B and K.
trained listener preferred speaker target from. I mean, he's taking. So I was bickering with Craig Stark in chat about this. That comes from a figure in Floyd Toole's book, Sound Reproduction, and uses a subset of data which was not publicly released from Sean Olive's research on preferred from the 2013 paper for preferred in-room bass and treble, right? Which was
Okay.
listener preferences for headphone and speaker frequency response targets, I think, something like that. The number of people in this trained listener block there is not big.
Yeah.
The variance between different listeners was quite high in that test. If you
In
just
the
took that
2013?
number of listeners, yeah,
No, the bounds are wide.
yeah. If you just
Specifically in the
took,
bass, it like goes from 0 to like plus 14 or something like that. It's crazy.
yeah, and because of that, if you end up on like any random subset of them, you can get a result that looks a lot different. But I'm not sure how much of that is just chance. Like I would, and that's where I'd be kind of concerned about trying to do this because it seems like a very sensitive thing, given that we're looking for a small variation. But sensitive measures statistically require large data sets if there's a lot of variation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it is based on kind of my conjecture here that if we do the testing we want to do, which is measuring HRTFs and then EQing the headphone to the HRTF and then doing preference adjustments,
I mean,
my
if you
first
wanted-
conjecture is that the variation would actually be tighter, and my
it would be
second
way
is
tighter.
that base level
Yeah.
would be dramatically lower because they wouldn't
I
be
think you're right.
offsetting the treble levels inherent
I mean,
to
it depends who you include, but yeah,
mismatch between the rig and the person.
I think you're right.
It's
That's
conceivable to me.
yeah. At the very least, it would reveal what the actual preferences are better than what we have right now among that group, right?
Yeah.
So,
But I don't know. We don't know. I do think in the absence of that, it would be useful for us to kind of. Well, honestly, we need to get the balance sorted out first.
that and and we need HRTFs.
Yeah, I mean, foreseeable future, we're working with rigs though, so like we need to get that sorted. But this is getting close to an internal discussion, so we should probably move to someone else's topic now.
We also should be winding down because we're approaching the 3-hour mark.
Yeah.
I will not be in the after show this time because I barely ate yesterday, and so I'm extremely hungry.
Yeah, I'm not going to
sick.
too. It's snowing, and I have to clear off my car.
Yeah. I'm
So
dealing
just,
with trying to get over the flu or cold or whatever I'm dealing with before Can Jam.
The flold.
Yeah.
Just a quick run
Liver
of hot
disease.
takes. Henri says the best and most useful content you could do is teaching EQ and talking about your EQ profiles. I mean, we have done that content, right? Like, I don't.
It could probably be updated, but the problem there is we don't really know what is the best way to do it. I will plug Audiophile in the chat.
Audiophile, not Owlfile.
Yeah.
I totally misread it.
Yeah, Audiophile in chat has a very good tool. Let me just link it in chat really quick. Now, it doesn't necessarily like steer you in a direction as far as what changes to make, but it does. It is a very good tool for doing what a lot of people do, which is using noise or sign generators to kind of identify resonances.
I
And
think the
applying
big thing
preference
there,
filters and stuff like that. So
even
take a look
those,
at that tool. It's pretty cool.
even if you're not going to do the EQ, those tools alone are super useful for being able to understand that what you're hearing doesn't necessarily match what the graph shows.
Yes.
and the ways in which this is frequency response when there is a gap between our understanding of what the graph shows and our experiences.
Agreed.
Yeah. But that said, we just don't have the certainty of process for what will give an optimum result. So it's a little hard for us to confidently prescribe something.
Yeah.
So this would be an ARIA-U disclaimers video.
So fun. Yeah, that's what people want, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Bash says there is a problem with old man at Abyss because he designs all Abyss headphones which fits his bald head.
Oh, maybe I would like it. I didn't find them that comfortable though.
If it were that simple, things would be a lot easier. But no, I don't think that's the issue.
Yakucho says Blaine reviews when would probably fit into a YouTube short anyway.
I mean, like the thing would be that you would actually have to do the videos. Like that's
the treble sucks, and the mid range sucks, and the bass.
We should publish that Amanus impression.
God, I want it so bad. Yeah.
Oris says the best speakers don't even have that good of a sound stage.
Based.
Kind of depends on the style of speaker in the room, though.
Sure. Yeah, I would say it heavily depends on the room.
Oris says, to clarify my point, if you keep your head very still, good speakers sound like good headphones soundstage wise. This take is weird. I have never had frontal imaging like with speakers with headphones. Speakers
just gotta listen to them free-field ones.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I've never had that experience, at least. And
have you heard the Grell phone though?
Doubt it. Yeah, I did hear the Grell phone.
Ooh, Joel. Only bald people should be able to design headphones because invariably people with hair will find most headphones more comfortable. I deeply disagree with this take, actually. I have a ton of hair, and 99% of headphones are uncomfortable, specifically on the top of my head.
Just wait. I'm gonna bring this, and it will be uncomfortable for you. It probably won't
Great.
fit.
Thanks. Love it.
No, that's the point, right? Like it's gonna.
You have too much hair, nitpicking and biased. I will.
Pendulum says, "How does listener get a seal with all that hair?" I'll give you.
I usually don't look like. Well, first, we're very leak tolerant headphones, such as these. So you don't really need a perfect seal. But two, I don't usually look like this when I'm like at home wearing a headphone.
Yeah, usually he looks like Mark Carney.
No, I usually look more like this because I kind of have to.
So less like Justin Trudeau. Okay.
Much less like Justin Trudeau. This is true.
Not doing the emo hair over one eye thing.
Oh no.
This was my life for a very protracted
Oh,
period,
no.
actually.
Hey, I know what listener looks like without hair. I know what listener looks like without face.
Oh. Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Just wait until I go
pretty
bald. I
much.
probably won't.
Wait, no, there's one more. Those that only listen to music while doing something else, that like driving, working out, etc., that say audiophiles are crazy for sitting listening to music, are the ones that are actually crazy.
The majority of my music listening is passive listening. I do active listening, but
oh really? The majority of mine is active listening.
Well, yes, you're a headphone reviewer.
Yeah. Best case scenario, active listening. I wouldn't say it's entirely the case. Like I listen to music when I'm playing StarCraft.
I think we're good, right? I think we can probably
On that terrible disappointment, it's
peel
time to
away.
end.
Yeah.
No stage today, guys.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah, we have things to deal with. I need to get to working on this, and get another print going.
Well, then, as always, we have been brought to you by headphones.com, your number one place to learn about and buy audio equipment. headphone speakers, DACs, amps, and cables, and probably other things covered by our frankly irrational 365-day return policy so that you can buy with confidence. In addition to funding this show, which is loss making and so runs because the store pays for it, we also maintain a community at forum.headphones.com where you can contribute topics for streams like this one, as well as a community at discord.gg/headphones where you can talk to us. I mean, you can talk to us on both of them, but people are somewhat more active on the Discord. So please support the store if you would like us to be fed and not, get hypothermia.
Yep. And on that note, we're gonna say goodbye. So
All right. Thanks, everyone.
later on.